Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. See Jolly, one of the OGs here in the comments already, which is great to see. Today, we're going to go over, is the case going cold here? Is the Nancy Guthrie case starting to be removed from the public's eye, especially with this Iran war that just started, right? So U.S. and Israel has attacked, or they're calling it a strike, but either way, the result is the same. We've bombed Iran. So I don't know if that's going to take away from what's going on here in this case, but either way, I think they still need some more developments. There's been a lot of theories. Oh, can you track the ransom notes if they were written via AI? Is there anything you can see on the Nest Cam footage with the person? What's in that person's pocket? Is there anything identifiable on them? There's just not much here. We're struggling. Tim, how are you? Hector, how are you? Kat, what's shaking from across the pond? It warms my heart to see so many green names in the comments here. It's awesome. Now, no AI videos tonight. But I'll tell you what, though, I certainly did not get punished for using those AI videos. That was one of my best performing videos. So again, some people hate AI, but apparently there's a lot of people who like them, who like it. So, and if that video's views are any indicator, that thing got over 500,000 views in one day. So I don't make the rules. I don't determine what people really like. I don't determine what people watch, but we kind of have to act accordingly sometimes. Lucia, welcome. Oh, Sablon Blonde's got some new songs out. Everyone should check out. D, how are you? And as we're rolling in here, remember to like the video as you roll in. Likes are free, as I always say. Likes are from my spirit animal, the night owl. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Brenda, how are you? And again, I go live usually a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern every night. Talk about true crime and current events. That could be, Hector. I think in the next couple days, I might go over more about why I think Sheriff Nanos is narcissistic. That won't be tonight, but soon enough. Aria, welcome. So let's see here. Yeah, Kat definitely loves her Fleetwood Mac, that's for sure.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really, really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. It is now day 28 in the search for Nancy Guthrie. This is Nancy Guthrie's house right behind me. It's really weird. Today is Saturday, but there's no one out here today. I mean, there's one other person out here, but none of the other media is out here. I know there's still some media in town, but it's kind of interesting. I've never been outside the house and really just been the only one. And it's just like super quiet out here when normally, you hear the humming of generators and, reporters talking to each other and that kind of.
So apparently the sheriff's department said they're only giving this case 4 detectives now and a supervisor because they have other cases to solve, I guess. But what does that tell you? They don't think they need everyone else anymore. They just think they can condense down the force to 4. And I would say let the Cajun Army go search for them. Let volunteers go look. I mean, it could be a small likelihood they find something, but still, a small likelihood is better than no likelihood, right? Hello there, Peach. Maureen, welcome. Formerly from Arizona, thanks for covering this. You gotcha, Soldier. Soldier Blow, they call her, or him. It's hard to know. Hoorah, Phil Bradley, who is neither late nor early, just on time, like me. Teresa, how are you? We might have a condensed day today because there's not as much to go over, but we shall see.
So it's kind of just been a different vibe. I was just thinking to myself, just sitting outside Nancy's, like sometimes I'll just look at the front door and think about, gosh, like what happened here, you know?
And look at all those no parking signs, right? That's one of the reasons why there's no media on the street. They've made it difficult for them. They got to Uber in or park in someone's driveway like Brian Hinton is doing. That person said, Brian, we want to help you here, so come park in our driveway. And everyone else has to walk or kind of go in from a distance now. They've made it more difficult, that's for sure. And also, like I said, with the Iran strike, that's going to take away some attention. News Nation is covering that. All right. So that's going to take away eyeballs from this case, too. And what did I say last week or even earlier this week? I said, if something big happens, this case is at risk for not getting as much attention and not being in the public's eye anymore.
But it's just weird to stare and think if you were here on early in the morning on February 1st, you would have seen what happened. And we still don't know now, 28 days later. But I have some new information in this episode that I'm going to get to. I want to talk about the change in resources, what the FBI is doing behind the scenes, what the Pima County Sheriff's Office is doing behind the scenes, because there have been some changes. Also, looking at the suspect photo more closely, a lot of you have asked me what I thought about what is in his pocket. It almost looks like there's an antenna sticking out of his pocket. I have a retired FBI.
So what do you all think it's in his pocket there? This is something we went over when I went over Jennifer Coffendoffer's video, I guess 2 days ago now. But what do you think? Is that a walkie-talkie? Is it a scrambler to scramble devices in the house or signals? What is it? What do you think it is? I guess this thing here, gun here next to the red circle. But what do you think is circled here? Let me know. This is an open-ended question.
FBI agent and CIA officer who's going to tell me what she thinks it is. And we're going to dive into that and other parts of the case together and just sort of go over where things go from here. Day 28. I'm going to get into all of it in this episode of Brian Hinton Investigates. All right. Hey, guys. So in terms of what is going on behind the scenes with detectives on the Pima County side and also on the FBI side.
So it looks like several people think it's a walkie-talkie. And by the way, I don't really plan on going over the Iran strike. That'll be a very polarizing thing. But we'll see. We'll see how things go.
There's been a change in resources I've learned behind the scenes. And basically what's happening is we knew that some of the FBI was going back to Phoenix, which does make sense because apparently they have thousands of hours of video to review, which I presume is probably from traffic cameras and that kind of thing. I don't think that they found thousands of hours of video from like neighborhood ring cameras and stuff. I don't think there's that many cameras. So when they said thousands of hours of video to review, I assume that has to do with traffic cams. So the fact that a lot of them are going back to Phoenix really doesn't surprise me, and I don't think impacts the investigation that much. And it doesn't feel active right now in Tucson. So it sort of makes sense. They are still going to keep a contingent of FBI agents on the ground here in Tucson. In terms of the Pima County Sheriff's Office, I'm told that they are still keeping a number of detectives on the case, and that will be all they work on, but it won't be all the detectives like it was. I mean, pretty much everyone with the Pima County Sheriff's Office was working the case at one point. So that's not going to be the case anymore, which makes sense. Because they have other crimes here. I mean, that's been one complaint that I've heard from people who live here is they're worried that other crimes aren't going to be investigated because all the focus was on Nancy Guthrie. So it makes sense that they would have to sort of reallocate some of those resources. It is, it's not good news that it's now day 28. And, most of these kinds of cases usually get solved within the first couple of days. But I don't think it's a cold case. Some people have asked me that. I don't think it's a cold case. And I do think it's going to be solved. I think it's just taking longer than a lot of us expected. A number of you have sent me questions that I'm going to answer at the end of this episode. Remember, we were going to have that News Nation special because of the war happening now in Iran. That it has been preempted. So I have a ton of your questions that I'm going to answer here. And I think that might be one of the other reasons, like there's like no media out here anymore. People have just kind of packed up and left. And I think also now with everything happening in the Middle East, just kind of the way the news cycle works, people are very, very quick to move on from things. But I want to get into a couple.
And I don't know if it's going to be completely cold. All they need is some new, like a good lead or an arrest. That would get eyeballs back on this for sure. But no leads, no SWAT raids by the FBI, nothing new, then it is at risk. But this upcoming week here, they need something. I think they need something. Or it might just drift into a cold case, unfortunately.
Of questions that I've had about the suspect and what is in his pocket. And there's some other things that I talked to my guest about in this episode. It's Tracy Walder, who's a friend of mine. She's a great guest because she is a former FBI agent, but also a former CIA officer. So I want to share this conversation with you. I'm joined now by Tracy Walder, former FBI agent and CIA agent. I always get confused. Is it agent or officer? Officer. That's right. Yeah.
It's fine.
It's nice to see you, Tracy. Thank you for.
Thank you, Brian. It's great to see you.
You've been all over this case, this Nancy Guthrie case. I've seen you on News Nation a ton. So I wanted to ask you a couple questions sort of that I've had lingering. With the suspect, one question that I've gotten a lot is and I'm assuming it's a he, in his pocket, there's what looks like almost a little antenna sticking out. And some people have thought, I've heard that it's a walkie-talkie. Other people have thought it could be a signal jammer. And I actually saw someone post a photo of a signal jammer, and it did look kind of similar. Have you noticed that? And what do you think it could be?
So I actually agree with both of those assessments. I know that's sort of wishy-washy, but again, I can't confirm, what's in his pocket. I assume it's a he as well. The walkie-talkie makes sense in the fact that I know I've talked before, I think with you, about the fact that I feel a getaway vehicle is going to be critical in this case if there's someone else that helped. And so that would be a way, obviously you wouldn't want to use a cell phone. That would be a way in a short range to communicate with someone to, bring a car to a certain location. So that's why I can get on board, right, with the walkie-talkie theory. In terms of the signal jammer, that makes sense as well. But the home in and of itself I'm not seeing that he took any devices with him. So I can see the possibility of both. I don't think we can discredit either, but I don't think that it's a phone, in my opinion.
I guess the walkie-talkie would make sense if
I mean, and Maureen, I still don't understand the distinction you're trying to make with what, like, this was in his right pocket, though. This thing, we'll go back to it, but this is his right pocket. This. Like, unless his back is to the camera here, this is his right pocket.
I think, again, just my hypothesis that he is arriving with things to subdue her. Maybe even, blankets or tarps to put her in. I don't want to seem overly morbid or graphic, but things like zip ties, tape, things to subdue her. That's what I think is in the backpack.
Yeah, I wondered about tarps too, just because it looks so full.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you would think of like tarps would be, you know what I mean? It would really fill out.
You roll it up. And
yeah. It is. It's sad to think about. I mean, and even in Savannah's latest video, it's almost like she's acknowledging that there's a real possibility now that, Nancy is no longer with us.
It's incredibly sad. Hard to talk about, right? In relation to this case, because in other cases we tend to have, unfortunately, deceased bodies or those kinds of things where there's like a finality, right, to that, and then you can kind of talk through that. But in this case, we don't have any of that, and so we want to. It's like you want to try to remain sensitive to what they're going through at the same time, but then also the reality and logic, of the situation.
Do you know, with the $1 million reward, and like, I think everybody's hoping that it's a lot of money, for someone who might know something. Does the FBI have ways that people can actually stay anonymous? Because I'm just thinking, like, if that is your family member who did it or something, and you want the money, but you don't want to be that involved in you know what I mean? So
my guess is the FBI, the way that they will handle something like that is they will know ultimately who you are. However, they can keep your name and all of that information totally anonymous to the public as long as you.
Now, what they were saying the other day is, I think Jennifer Coffendoffer said this, where when that $1 million reward was announced, if that was going to prompt someone to do something, they thought they would do it within 48 hours. And I'm pretty sure 48 hours is up now. So does that mean no one's going to come forward because of the reward? Maybe. Does it mean that whoever does know what's happened is very scared if they do come forward, regardless of any kind of witness protection or anonymity that they think? That's also possible too. But I guess that's a good question for the chat. Do you think someone's going to come forward with this $1 million reward? Are they going to say something because of the $1 million reward? Press 1 if you think so. Press 2, no, that's not going to change anything. So 1, you think the reward is going to prompt someone to reach out with a good lead, like a real lead. Press 2 if you think it's going to go nowhere.
You didn't have participation in the crime. And again, maybe they'll work with you if they have participation in the crime, right? I don't know. There's so many different ways that they could go about that. But if you don't, and you're just want to give a tip, I don't know that you can remain truly anonymous in terms of the FBI not finding out who you are, but they would never allow the public to find out who you are.
Okay. Yeah, that's good for people to know since, you know,
Mm-hmm.
So I've been away from.
So you can come forward, but the FBI is going to know. The public might not know, but the FBI will. And depending on who you are, I mean, that might be a problem for some people, right? If someone knows something and they're a criminal, I mean, are they going to come forward and try to claim this and then risk getting in trouble? I don't know if they would.
Already. It's been personal data off the market. Do you think the reward could work, or do you think it would have already? It hasn't been a full week, but
so yes and no. Be careful. I think it would have worked earlier on. I think now that dollar amount, excuse me, because the dollar amounts, and I said that on News Nation, I felt were obviously low. No one's going to talk for that amount. The problem is that now it's been 3 going on a month, I guess now, of this, and no one has come forward. And so I think the people involved now are like, well, they can't figure this out. So what does it matter? Even if I do come forward and get this $1 million and then I go to jail, for that, they haven't been able to figure this out. So I don't know that it's going to move the needle now. I think it would have in the first weeks of the investigation.
Yeah. And I think back to Koberger, they weren't talking much, the police or the FBI, and we were being really critical of them. I was, and then come to find out they were making a lot of progress in the scenes. And I hate to be like negative, but I just don't get that sense in this case. Like, I don't feel like there's a ton happening that we don't know about, and there's some imminent arrest.
So the difference is in the Idaho case, and I say this because I think you're awesome and you're my friend. Yeah, I disagreed with that, criticism of the police, because I personally did feel that they knew a lot more. But what I will say in that case is I felt they did a really good job, though, with communicating, with investigating, with all of that wasn't necessarily up for debate. It was just the fact that we had no information that was up for debate. In this case, I feel that from day one, it's been handled in ways that I think a lot of law enforcement officers, officials disagree with, like releasing the crime scene too soon. All of those things are problematic and do compromise the case. And so a lack of information isn't bad and doesn't compromise the case, but this lack of getting along, lack of investigating things properly, having to go back and forth, all of those things do, in my opinion, compromise the case.
And show that maybe they're not in a good place.
I think it shows that they're not in a good place, but I do feel that they could have been in a better place had things been handled differently.
Yeah. What do you make of, and I don't know if you've seen this, we had a drone video the other day of They were doing like one final walk through the house. It
Yeah,
seemed like,
I saw that.
and there were those people in the suits. There was a woman in like a kind of a dressy suit and a man. And we found out later that they were, or at least some of them were U.S. attorneys.
Yes.
What do you make of them being there?
Yeah, so that was a funny, everyone's like, oh, those are FBI agents. I was like, that's definitely not an FBI agent because I never wore a skirt as an FBI agent. That was 100% not an FBI agent. I assumed they were U.S. attorneys because you have to remember if someone is found, right, and if this case is prosecuted, they need to have an understanding of the case. And I believe in Idaho, they walked the house as well with the 3D modeling. That's actually not uncommon. And that's a good thing because you want them to have a look at the crime scene before it's sent back to the family so that they can properly prosecute the case. So I didn't think it was necessarily a bad thing. I just knew it wasn't FBI agents.
So it's not necessarily a positive sign that they're about to prosecute someone or something?
I don't think so. I think it's just a sign that it's been almost a month now. We have removed all physical evidence that we can from this home. We have thoroughly processed it. And I said this house needed 3 to 4 weeks to be processed, which is pretty much what they're doing. It's not, I don't want to say of use, that sounds very harsh, but it's not needed for evidence purposes anymore. They have gotten all of the physical evidence that they need to from that home. And so the attorneys want to.
So again, they gotten all the physical evidence they needed to from the home. All the while, they didn't even use the mat. They didn't get the evidence from the mat as far as we know. I mean, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they do that? I don't think there's a reason why they wouldn't, but they didn't. Like, do you really think they got everything they needed from that mat before they opened up the crime scene? Somehow I doubt it. But what do you think, chat? Do you think they got everything they needed from that front step mat? I mean, press 1 if you think they did. Press 2 if no, they blundered the mat and they should have gotten more. So press 1 if you think they did their due diligence with the mat and got everything, all the possible evidence they could. Press 2, no, they didn't, and they bungled that part.
See it one more time prior to it being released. That's all. That's really all.
Makes sense. So you think it's okay that they're releasing the house now? I mean, they did actually last night, I think, officially.
Yeah. I don't know that they have a choice, if that makes any sense. I mean, I think that you can't hold on. Listen, the FBI can hold on to a crime scene for 6 months if that's what they need to do. But in this case, it sounds like they've been in and out quite a bit. We've seen the awesome drone footage that you've had. We've seen people coming in and out. I would imagine that by this point, any biological or not digital evidence would have been acquired from the home. So I don't necessarily see a problem with it.
Something else I wanted to ask you about.
So it looks like unanimously the chat thinks they did not get all the evidence they could have from the mat and they bungled it. So
I reported a couple of weeks ago that there had been polygraphs used in the case, and I'm pretty sure it was the FBI. The sheriff kind of responded and said, oh, the polygraphs that people are seeing are new hires at the sheriff's office. But the polygraphs that I was talking about weren't from that day. They were from a different time. And I think it was the FBI, not the sheriff's office, who was administering them. But I saw on your Instagram, you actually have kind of an interesting story with the polygraph. Was it when you were in the CIA that you had to take a polygraph? Or?
So I had to take for both because of the kinds of cases that I worked at FBI at the time. I took something called the lifestyle polygraph, which is definitely not what they're giving these individuals. There's no way that that's what they're giving. Yeah. Those are 8-hour-long polygraphs looking at like deviations of your life and deviant life behaviors and those kinds of things. I don't think that that's what they're giving these individuals. I think they're giving them a very quick poly. So we're talking 30 to 60 minutes is my guess, to eliminate people. I don't want to say completely eliminate them, but to help sort of thin this lead herd.
So that's an interesting question, right? So they gave polygraphs to the family. What kind of questions do you think they were asking them? Do you think they were asking them all, okay, did you have anything to do with Nancy's disappearance? Did you commit this crime? I mean, I guess, well, first they have to establish a baseline, right? Okay, what's your name? Tommaso. What's your name? Annie, what's your name? Savannah. So they get your base rate, and then they start asking you questions to see how much further away from the base rate you get. And I'll tell you, if you're guilty, it's got to be a nerve-wracking experience going under the polygraph, right? That's what I would think. But what kind of questions do you think they even asked?
That they have of this overwhelming amount of leads and individuals to decide whether, someone just right off the top, if they're telling the truth and answering these basic questions, then maybe that's someone that, in terms of triage, we don't have to clear them, but we don't have to put them at the top of our list right now.
Right.
And so I think that's what they're probably using them for. It's not, you can't use them in court, right? It's not an admission of guilt or innocence. So I think that's what they're doing with them.
And I guess if someone said, I don't want to take it, that's kind of a bad sign too. Of like why would someone, right?
I think people are mixed, right? Like on that. First of all, it's scary. I mean, polygraph is not a fun experience, right? You're hooked up to things, you're sitting in this chair. It is scary. And I also think a lot of times we see on TV, all those kinds of things that, there could be used against you and all. And so I think some people are not wanting to take them because they're simply just scared of them, right? That's like one subset of the population. But yes, other individuals who are refusing to take them, it obviously could be for reasons that they want to hide their involvement.
So you had to do an 8-hour one?
So here's the thing, right? I think people that are psychopaths, sociopaths, antisocial personality disorder, people that have impaired empathy and really do feel like very confident in themselves, they're going to do better with polygraph tests. Or as George and Seinfeld would say, it's not a lie if you believe it to be true, right? And that's probably what they would also say to themselves. They convince themselves what they're saying is true.
Yes.
2 times?
2, 1, 2, and then 3 times.
Just to qualify to work on certain cases, or?
No. So at CIA, to have a top secret, and then SCI, which is sensitive compartmented information, you have to take what's called the lifestyle polygraph. And so, yes, the first one came back as a failure or inconclusive. So I had to come back the next day.
Oh, no.
Yes. And which I passed.
And what do they ask you?
Questions on there were, they run the gamut of sexual preferences and orientation. Not that it's bad. They just want you to be out. And they ask you about drug usage. That was the question that I had trouble.
That's interesting. So the CIA questions you about your sexual affiliation. Not because it's bad, but because they want you to be out. That's interesting. I wonder how they get around that with Title VII or discrimination stuff, etc. Because what if someone doesn't want to answer that?
Because I've actually never done drugs in my life. And the polygrapher had a hard time believing that. And so the problem is when someone's calling you a liar and you're not lying, your blood pressure starts to go up and you start to get frustrated.
Right.
And that's what was reading as inconclusive.
Wow. What if you had done drugs? Like, are you allowed to say it?
Yes, but it has to be within a certain amount of months, right? So you just can't have done that yesterday. Obviously, they have a certain month usage going back. Marijuana would be fine in terms of month usage going back. I think you might have some other issues with more illicit drugs.
You must have been I would have been freaking out when I found out I had to come back the next day.
I actually said I'm
I'd be even more nervous.
I'm done. I actually said I'm not doing this. I'm quitting. I'm not doing this. And my recruiter actually called me and was like, no, you really should go back. And so I went back and I actually fell asleep in the chair because I didn't sleep the whole night. And that's when they decided that I was telling the truth because I wasn't
Wow, that's so interesting.
It's kind of a bit of a weird story there. So she refused to do it at first. She's like, no, I'm done. Then she goes back and she's so nervous that she stays up all night and then falls asleep in the chair. And so they're like, oh, she must be okay. Interesting. And someone said in the chat, well, someone could try to bribe you or use it against you, your sexuality. Maybe. In this day and age, I don't know how well that would work anymore. Back in the day it would, but I don't know about anymore.
Yeah, I think people are just kind of fascinated by polygraphs. I don't know, to be hooked
up. They
suck. It sounds like. Yeah.
They really suck, for lack of a better word.
So back to the case. I mean, what is your gut? I keep wondering, like, I guess it could be like with Koberger, I think it was 48 days and
Yeah.
I was just sitting there and I got a text like they think they got him in Pennsylvania and suddenly everything changed, I mean, I guess that could happen at any moment.
That's how I think this case will go as well. It's one of those kinds of things that's going to happen at any moment. I don't know. Because police are going to treat it, and you've done such a great job of like hiding the locations of the SWAT raids and those kinds of things. And police are going to treat this very similarly because as of now, they're treating it that Nancy Guthrie is still alive, right, in a hostage kind of situation, unless that's changed. And so, I mean, you will see a very sudden movement of law enforcement behavior. This isn't going to be something that's going to take, pain out their days.
I just keep wondering, is it going to be one of those cases where it's like everything goes dead and then like 4 years from now, suddenly it's like there's been a break in the,
I mean, that very well could be the case. I just hope not, because it's so sad, for the family.
Are you surprised that I guess when I'm outside Nancy's house, I just think like, I look at the front of the house and I envision like if she came out I just can't believe that happened there. And with all the resources of the FBI and with President Trump even talking about it, and there's this obvious pressure on them to do whatever it takes to solve, that they still can't figure with all the technology, I guess I'm still just kind of surprised that we're here in this spot.
Yeah, but if you think about it, okay, in this case, he had an 8 or a 9 hour head start, right? And even in Koberger's case too, he also had, when did they report his time? At 11 a.m. So a 7-8 hour head start. And so I think it's that head start that I think is really problematic because this person had such a head start. And then also because this case initially wasn't necessarily even treated like a kidnapping. It was treated like, some kind of a burglary gone wrong. And so I think all those kinds of things add up as to why it's not solved. And yes, you would think in this day and age with technology, and that's why I know this person will be got at some point. There's no question. It just might not be today. That's the problem.
Do you think those ransom notes in the beginning sent to the local TV stations and TMZ could end up just being unrelated?
I think those ransom notes were just people trying to exploit the situation. But what do you think, Chap? Do you think they were trying to exploit the situation, or do you think they were legit? So 1 for exploit, 2 for they were legit. And also, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Likes are for my spirit animal, Shadow the Night Owl, and for the flock of black sheep here too. Super chats are a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Super stickers are too. You can become a member. There was a bunch of people that became a member because of Johnny last night. And because of that, we're going to do some members only videos at a point too. I think that would be a good benefit for that. And again, I go live every night to talk about true crime and current events at a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern usually. But come in and say hello to the flock of black sheep. We got a great group of people here. Very supportive and encouraging group.
Some person trying to get money.
I already think they are unrelated.
You do, yeah?
I think I do. And I think that is a bummer too, because and it's no one's fault. They had to treat that until they could not as real. And so that then added an additional 10 days, right? Of now going through these ransom notes. So everything's just been sort of stacked against them, I guess.
I've heard a couple different things. Burglary gone wrong. Some people think, I've heard like people think that it was a Savannah Guthrie stalker. I mean, do you have a feeling?
So most people think that those ransom notes were people trying to exploit. And I would agree with that.
Yes. I definitely don't think that this is a burglary gone wrong. Because even to your point, like you can't believe that this is this house on this street. There are so many other houses to pick from. And also in a burglary, we don't tend to see them taking a victim with them. That just tends to not be the case because it bogs them down, quite frankly. I do think that this is someone that was either upset with something Savannah Guthrie had done or had some obsession with her. And that's why they targeted this family, which I don't want to, I was being cautious to say that because I never want her to think it's her fault. It's not her fault that this person did something like this, but that's just how I feel.
That's what your gut tells you.
Mm-hmm. It's just too targeted, Brian. This is too, you've been there for such a long time. Like, this is not a house that you just come upon and decide to rob. It's just not that.
Well, thank you for your time, Tracy, as always.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate Tracy for taking the time to talk with me. Again, it's not very many people out there who are FBI agents and CIA officers. So that was, so she's a
FBI agent and CIA officers. And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't have guessed it from her, right? I wouldn't think, oh yeah, this is definitely an FBI agent and a CIA officer. And the reason I want to make it so that there's a perk for memberships, right? Now, if you guys have other suggestions out there, let me know. What kind of other suggestions would you like to see members have, or what kind of benefits would you like to see them have? But I want to make it so that there's something that, besides just supporting me, there's something I can give back to you all too. So let me know if you have any ideas for that in the chat.
Always really, really helpful. I want to go through some of your questions that you sent me and just kind of rattle through a few. Could Nancy have been deceased before removal? Yes, she could have. And Tracy actually mentioned in that episode, one theory of why the backpack was so full is because it could have been tarps to actually move a body. And I hate to talk like that. And it's sad to think about, but that is definitely a real possibility.
Yes, definitely targeted. I would agree. And to me, it's 50-50 whether she was alive or not when she even left the house. So targeted, which means not a burglary to me. And it's 50-50 if she was even alive as she left.
So she could have been deceased before removal. And of course, there was the blood that we saw outside leading from the front door to the driveway. So it's definitely a possibility. Any word on Annie and Tommaso? Did they ever get their car back, and have they returned home? They have not got their car back, from what I am told. It is still in evidence, at least as of yesterday. In terms of whether they returned home, I don't think so at this point, from what I can tell. They did install some new security cameras on their home, but I don't think that they are back staying there again, from what I can tell. Was Nancy Guthrie or any of her family members involved in any legal proceedings that someone would want Nancy Guthrie to disappear or send a message to the Guthrie family? Not that I know of. I mean, we've been to the courthouse. We've looked into a lot of that stuff just to see what's out there. We haven't been able to find anything like that. What about the 911 call about the caller who said a woman was trying to escape from a moving vehicle and yelling for help 3 miles away that morning, 30 minutes after her pacemaker disconnected? Seems like a major ball was dropped if that was Nancy yelling for help. So I have sources, just to back up for a minute, there was some scanner audio where there was a car reported with a woman yelling for help after Nancy went missing. I have sources who have told me that that car was pulled over. There was a bolo that went out for that car, and they talked to the driver, and it has nothing to do with the Nancy Guthrie investigation. So, yeah, a lot of you have asked me about that. What about the 911 call about the caller who said a woman was trying to escape? Oh, no, that's the same one. Sorry. What are the sentiments on the blocking of the camera with a handful of flowers as a possible reason to obscure Nancy Guthrie?
So there's a question from the chat. I'm proposing this to the chat here. Can you tell from a blood sample whether the blood was drawn from someone dead or alive? I don't think you can, but can you, chat?
Being taken out the front door at that point by another individual. And what about the back door that was left open? Why the confusion? So I've never reported that the back door was left open. I've seen some others report that. I haven't had that personally confirmed. And in terms of putting the grass over the front camera, it's kind of one of the things that makes this guy look like an amateur, from what I'm told, why you wouldn't just pull the camera right away. It's one of the reasons I'm told that it's likely not like someone in the cartel, because they would just pull the camera. They know to do that. A professional burglar would know to do that. So trying to cover it with grass at first, I'm told, is a sign that this was someone who's not a professional. But at the same time, I kind of hate saying that over and over again, that he's not a professional or, is an amateur, because, I mean, he's outsmarted everyone until now, and it's day 28. So I don't know, maybe not so much of an amateur. Is this a cold case now? Will we ever get answers? Where does it go from here? I do not consider it a cold case. I mean, I know it feels like forever, and 28 days feels like forever for those of us who are invested in the case. But a lot of other big cases, I brought this up before, Brian Koberger, 48 days. I think it was 48. Maybe it was a little more. it's not uncommon for these things to take longer to be solved. I mean, it could be months, but I really believe in my heart it's going to be solved just with all the resources on it. So I don't think it's a cold case. What about the Google searches that we keep hearing about? Google, we actually reached out to Google and they say that those are not legit. So that's why I haven't been reporting on those. Has any?
Interesting. Improve yourself. Thank you very much for the super sticker here. I'm really grateful for all your support. Improve yourself has been very generous on the channel. So like I said, super stickers and super chats are a great way to support the channel. Thank you so much. Also, remember to like the video while you're here. Likes are free. Likes are for my spirit animals, Shadow the Night Owl, and my other spirit animal, the Fox.
Anyone looked into the gem show that was going on? Yes, and there was a gem show going on, which is really interesting. It was actually very hard to get hotel rooms right when we first got here. I think it's one of the biggest gem shows anywhere. People come from all over the country here for this gem show. So there was a gem show going on. There were a lot of people from out of town here for the gem show. But whether that's connected to the case or anything like that, there's no indication of that. Are there any vacant homes near Nancy Guthrie's home? Yes, there are. There's actually some construction going on up the street with a couple of houses. So there is a lot of construction in the area. I've noticed at least like 3 or 4 houses being built. If someone abducted Nancy to make a point, why haven't they said anything? That's a really good question. With a kidnapping, you know, normally there would be a ransom and there would be communication and there would be proof of life. And none of that has really happened in this case, which is leading a lot of people to believe, a lot of experts to believe that this actually wasn't a kidnapping, that it was just an abduction.
Why are all the cars moving so slow in the background there? They want some screen time with Brian Netton? I mean, one of my thoughts as to why no one's come forward so far, if it's for revenge or punishment, is this is part of the revenge and punishment, is keeping everyone in limbo for so long. Because it can't be a very pleasant feeling for Savannah and anyone else who isn't involved in the family to not know like this. It's the uncertainty that really hurts. And in fact, it's that hope that can actually cause more pain later if it turns into bad news. So that's something to keep in mind too.
What is the hardest or most challenging part about being a crime reporter? Okay, that's an interesting one. A couple of things. Probably being away from home can get kind of hard. Like, for example, today, you know, like I've been going every day, and today it's just kind of the first day where it's been really slow. And like I said, I'm kind of like the only one out here, and everyone on my team is just kind of relaxing today because there's not much going on, and you know, the news cycle has kind of been taken over by what's happening with Iran. So being away from home, and then sometimes you do get kind of lonely. But I'm also like so wrapped up in my work that I'm always thinking about it. I'm always trying to think of something to go do and look into. So I stay pretty busy most of the time. But I would say being away from home is hard. And then also just like, you know, the sadness of the cases. And sometimes it's easy to put that out of your mind when you're just hardcore working. But when you slow down a little bit, you think about how sad it is. You think about Nancy Guthrie. Like I said at the beginning, like sometimes I just stare at the front door and think about her. She was brought out the front door, whatever happened. And you think about the families. And for me, I find myself like it hits me later on. Like I'm so wrapped up in the job and working hard that sometimes it's like kind of like around right now, like after things are kind of winding down a little bit, that I start to feel that a little more. So that's kind of a hard part of the job, I would say. But you know, it doesn't compare at all to what the families and the victims are going through, obviously. So my heart goes out to them, and I think about them. I think about Savannah Guthrie and her family, and I'm committed to staying on the case. I don't know how long I'll stay out here. I don't have any plans to leave right now, but at some point I will obviously have to leave, especially if things really slow down. But I'll rush back immediately if anything happens. Again, I don't have any plans to leave now. So
well, this is Brian's kind of warning that it might not be up to him, but News Nation might assign him to go somewhere else. And when might that date be? I say it's possible this upcoming week if nothing comes out. But what do you guys think? How long do you think Brian Netton's going to be out there? Think he's going to leave this week? The week after?
I'll have more episodes in the coming days, and we'll see. Hopefully there's a development. I mean, hopefully something happens. And again, I don't feel like it's a cold case, but that doesn't mean it's going to be solved in the next couple of days. I mean, it could be months. They'll get the DNA right, I think, with the genetic genealogy. It may take time. So that's the latest. Again, day 28, it's Saturday. Appreciate you guys for following along, sticking with me through this whole thing.
And I'm not even so sure about getting the genetic genealogy right at this point, because the sample wasn't good for CODIS, and they don't know what kind of DNA it was, touch DNA or whatever, but it could be anybody. Just because that thing comes up with something doesn't mean it's going to be a good match. The more I learn about the Kohberger case, the more I think they actually got like pretty lucky with that. They got pretty lucky that sheath, they found that sheath that the knife was in. That's basically a Hail Mary development. And I kind of think they need something like that with this and this.
And I'll talk to you guys later.
Because right now, what is the genetic genealogy even going to get with this? It could be so many things. It could be so many things. So now, yeah, it could be. It could be this week. So you guys want me to watch Jennifer Coffendoffer, or there's a new case of this 11-year-old kid that killed his father. And he killed his father because the father hid his Nintendo Switch because he didn't want him to play it anymore. The kid was searching for it, and instead he found the key to the gun safe, opened up the gun safe, loaded the gun, and then shot his dad and killed him. So, do you want me to go over Jennifer Coffendoffer's video from today, or would you rather switch it up and go to that case? So, Coffendoffer, someone says, that's why they call Kat Slim Shady. She's back. She's back. Coffin dog. Everyone always says something, calls her a different name. Coffendoffer, Coffin Dagger. I'll tell you what, she has a fun name to say, that's for sure. In fact, this video is pretty informative, by the way. It asks some very interesting questions. And the better your questions are, the better your answers will be. The better quality answers you get.
True Crimers, welcome to Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Coffendoffer. Oh my gosh, it feels great to actually have some sleep. Insane over the last 2 days in a row. Between the travel schedule, just insane. But anyway, got a good night's sleep last night, feeling great and excited to be here. It is time to talk about Nancy Guthrie. Nancy Guthrie went missing reportedly again on February 1st of this year. She's the the mother of Savannah Guthrie, talk show host on the Today Show. And she went missing again on the 1st from her home in Tucson. Now, remember, she'd been in this home for about 50 years. I also want to always, and I almost always touch on this, the fact that the sheriff mentioned very early on in one of his very first press.
So this is former FBI agent Jennifer Coffendoffer. You will see her on Tony Bruschi's show, Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. You will also see her on Joe Pag's channel. Definitely go check out Joe Pag's channel. He's really clear, concise, and to the point. I like him. Check out Tony Bruschi as well. His channel is called Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Jennifer Coffendoffer is often a guest on his show. And there'll be a point where I'll probably invite Jennifer on my show as well, if I can get a hold of her. But also, while you're here, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Likes are for my spirit animal, Shadow the Night Owl. And come say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat here. Awesome group of people that are very supportive of one another. We've got a good vibe going. Vibes for days.
In fact, it might have been the first presser that his sheriffs, his deputies actually reported to her house on Saturday at night. Those are his exact words. Saturday at night, my deputies were there. No one else was there in terms of our other law enforcement partners. I just can never let that leave my mind until that is rectified. I just don't understand the specificity of saying the word Saturday and saying the word that night, when in fact, according to all the reports that we know later, it was said that when she didn't end up going with her church group, she always celebrated church with friends at a local place, that when that happened and she didn't show up, that was the first indication. So I think that will always bother me until we get someone to rectify that one way or the other, whether it was just an absolute misspeak, which happens all the time and can happen, very forgivable, or whether it is really there was some sort of call and somebody went out there early on and just nothing was done. So anyway.
So about Nancy going to church, what would happen is she would go to a friend's house, and from the friend's house, they would watch remote church, the church that Savannah went to in New York. So that explains a lot of things, right? So that Nancy didn't go to the friends. So that's how they knew she wasn't there, but they watched a church in New York, right? That's what happened.
I always like to preface the time Nancy went missing with that until somebody rectifies that. Today, I was going to get into a lot of issues regarding, not issues, but a lot of information regarding Nancy Guthrie, and also if that information could provide clues as a motivation as to why Nancy Guthrie was abducted. But I, quite frankly, with all the traveling and with my work issues, or not issues, but just my workload, I have not been able to get the full totality of everything that I wanted together. Can you all hear my puppy? He's crying because he needs to go outside. One moment. Come on. Come on, baby. Can't ignore Simba. So we're going to go over a couple of other things. I wanted to talk back again. I know I talked about this a little yesterday, but because I was reporting from the airport, it was difficult. First of all, I found this nice quiet spot, and then they decided to blare the music about at the exact time I decided to go on. So anyway, excuse me. Anyway, I wanted to talk again about this blood spatter that we see here. This is the best picture I can find. It's really important to note because I could tell by a lot of the communication I had back.
And this is the video that we went through that Brian Etten posted, right? His assistant walked up to the door. There's that mat that they certainly should have tried to get something from, but it doesn't seem like they did. And also, education time, it is spatter, S-P-A-T-T-E-R, not splatter, S-P-L. It is S-P-A, spatter, blood spatter.
Particularly on Twitter X, that people think this was the day of. This was not the day of at all. This was Brian Etten going up on that porch with his camera person and them taking a picture. This is days later. And a lot of people have commented, you see that little green leaf that's on one of the blood, that, oh, see, the blood was already there and then the shrubbery came. I don't believe that at all. I 100% believe that the blood was there, that the shrubbery was there. In other words, when he went up to that porch and used the shrubs that he reached back to take. Let's see if I have that exact picture. I don't have that exact picture. Sorry. Let me remove Nancy for the moment. I don't have the exact picture, but right about this time, and I love this picture because you could so clearly see the face. And again, I will always believe that people who know and care about this person absolutely know who this was. If this were my husband, my brother, my father in this attire and everything we can see, I would absolutely know who he is. So in any event, he puts up shrubbery in front of the Ring camera. And I believe that, of course, for that reason, the shrubbery was there well in advance of her.
Now, when he did that, do you think that was an example of calculated incompetence like we went over yesterday? Him trying to make it seem like, oh, I'm clueless. I'm going to try to cover the camera with foliage. Or do you think it was just a dopey thing to do? So do you think calculated incompetence, or no, he really was just being like silly and dumb? So 1 for calculated incompetence, 2, no, he really was being dumb.
Being taken away. Now, I've always said the amount that he pulled does not match up with the amount that we see here. This is far less. And I truly believe, again, that little piece and speck you see on that blood was just blown in there over those days in advance of Brian Inton and the camera crew taking this photo. I believe this was clearly when she was removed from the house and those blood droplets fell. I've also said numerous times that I believe that the reason you see this blood spattering in this particular space is because as he turned around to shut that door, I believe that the blood dripped multiple times and caused this spattering effect. But
yeah, she's saying it correctly, spattering. But I mean, Livin proposed a good question here. If that was your family or spouse in the Nest Cam footage, do you think you'd be able to tell? And I would say maybe. I think it would depend on who it was in the family, right? But do you think you'd be able to tell your family or your spouse if they were the one in the Nest Cam footage? So press 1 if yes, and press 2 if no. And in terms of the calculated incompetence question or being dumb, it seemed like a fair mix of both is what I saw.
again, I did not work at the Quantico lab analyzing blood spatter. I'm only speaking from my experience in seeing blood spatter as an investigator, not as the criminologist that would actually be evaluating this spatter. But I do have somebody that I'm going to be having on to talk about this, because Mac, and there was also a doctor that pointed out, Jen, this is, they believe, from her coughing and from the actual blood, I guess, coming out of her mouth, which really would imply a couple of things, of course. One, which is a good thing, that she was alive at this time. And secondarily, it would imply, sadly, that she had internal trauma, internal bleeding. And that's why when she coughed or sneezed or whatever, it came out. I'm just not convinced that's this. I know that I'm going against what some other people have said. That's just not quite what I'm seeing, but I get why they're saying that. I get why they're saying that. So I'm going to have a reconstructionist on to talk.
So it looks like most people say that they would be able to tell. They'd be able to recognize if there was family or spouse. Not everybody, but it looks like most people said yes.
Talk about this. I'm just lining it up, but he's going to come on. He's just got a huge, busy schedule. Another sort of hypothesis from a lot of people is that she was fireman carried out. So in other words, she was taken, thrown out over the shoulder, and then that's why you see this blood dripping. I have been of the opinion, and again, all my viewpoints are from the vantage of working cases and debriefing individuals who do horrible crimes like this.
So a good point Jennifer is going to make in this stream is she thinks that the backpack would get in the way a little bit of a fireman's carry. So over her shoulder, over their shoulder. And so again, it's possible more than one person was carrying her. And we just don't know. But you would think what would happen is they go in there. If she's still alive, they probably have tape over her mouth, right? Because they don't want her making noise. But that's if she's alive. But it's also possible that they maybe drugged her with something to make her pass out so that would do the dirty work for them and she wouldn't be making noise. That's probably possible too.
And what they did, what I've seen, combined with, of course, training and what I've studied. So adding all that together, and I'm not 100% convinced of that. I just believe that this blood falls much closer to the ground from what I can see. And it's possible that if she was fireman carried and she was bleeding from the arms, which we've all seen the pictures of Nancy on the Today Show, where her arms and hands are absolutely beat up, just paper thin looking skin, and the blood the bruising you could see, which is from blood thinners. When you see that, it's clearly somebody typically who is on blood thinners. So is it possible her hands, if she was fireman carried, would have been dangling over the shoulder and dropped? I just don't believe that. When you fireman carry somebody, for those of you who have, and I've had to do it, that is not what happens. And they're very far off the ground, typically, pretty far off the ground. I would say 3 or more feet off the ground, depending. So anyway, I've always believed she was carried more like this, like you carry somebody. If you can see me doing this motion like this, but down low, she was carried out. I've always thought also that she was likely hooded. And I thought that because I just believe that that's what they might have had in that bag to, zip ties and other items to constrain her, combined with anything they might have used to cause the cameras, to remove them, or cause any wire cutting type tools, any tools they thought they might have needed. And then I also believe they would want something to shroud her or to put over her for a couple of reasons. In the dark, it would be difficult because now I think we're seeing these people are much more sophisticated than we gave them credit for. It would be difficult just in a court of law. You would want to be able to say, well, you can't say for sure what's underneath there. I'm just playing an Alan Jackson type attorney aspect. It would be obvious what was taken, but somebody could try to argue something else if they're covered. And then secondarily, it would make them not able to see a vehicle you were going toward. I believe she was put in the trunk. There's no way she was put in the compartment of that vehicle. In other words, the back seat or the passenger seat. No way this person is going to risk being caught by being pulled over or some.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably putting her in the trunk. At most, though, they're like laying her down in the back seat, maybe. But that would even still be a risk, right? If you're getting pulled over, why would you risk that? You're not going to. So the trunk, and they're probably going to make it so that even if they were pulled over, again, there's going to be tape, and they probably want her to be at the least passed out if she's not already dead. So again, that's what a criminal, I think, would do, right? Through the trunk. And you don't want her making any noise, and you want to get out of there as fast as possible. And you got 8 or 9 hours there of a head start before even anyone comes over to the house. How far away can you be in 8 or 9 hours? Well, the Mexico border is a little over an hour away. So you could have been 7 hours south of that from there. Or I would bet you go there. You don't go north. You don't go to California. You don't go east. You probably go south. That's just me.
Somebody looking in that window, even if they were dark, there's no way they're going to risk that. This is late at night, and oftentimes vehicles that are out this late at night are pulled over by police. So I just think she was put in the trunk. I think she was constrained. I believe her mouth would have been taped if she was alive. We don't know that she wasn't alive. The fact that, and maybe we're going to see this, we have not seen, and I pointed this out. It was so funny. I pointed this out, and that I think it was Fox that picked it up. But where's the cleaning crew? Typically, if you're getting ready to return back and the crime scene's been, it's been decided that there's nothing else that can be gleaned from it, a crime scene crew in other words, not from law enforcement, but rather that the family pays for. You'll remember this in the Ellen Greenberg case. That was a big case where that crew came in literally the day after because the apartment staff wanted it in and wiped clean all the evidence, sadly, which has made that case near impossible. I don't think it will no one will be charged, even though I think a lot of people believe who might have been responsible. But nevertheless, it was wiped clean. A lot of people don't know that. The next day, because the apartment staff, there was all that blood and all that horrible, gruesome sight, and they wanted it clean. So they hired a hazmat crew, or I say hazardous material because blood is considered hazardous material, but they hired a crew, a bio-cleaning crew, biohazard type crew to come in. And they exist. They're in every city. And they come in and they clean it typically, in this case, it was at the landlord's expense, but in this case, it would be at the Guthrie expense to go do that. I haven't seen that yet. And I think it'll be very interesting.
I mean, and just overall, look at all this foliage, look at all this blood. It's like you couldn't find any DNA there that could be legit. And what were they saying? This saliva from the flashlight onto the glove, maybe onto the ground, could have been dried saliva there, could have been maybe hair, maybe, right? And I would imagine hair is a good source of DNA. It's probably one of the holy trinity, or the quad, the good quad, not the dark tetrad, but the good quad of either blood, semen, hair, saliva. Those are probably the top 4 sources, right? But again, if they didn't take the mat, they didn't do the best they could, unfortunately.
To see if we see that, because that would indicate, of course, huge signs of possible biomaterials, such as blood, that would need to be cleaned up before the family could take back possession of the house. So I'm very interested to see, if and when that happens. But the question is, you would never take an individual and not tape their mouth if they were alive. And if they did tape her mouth, then she wouldn't be able to cough all of this up, you see. And that's kind of the point I want to make, is that, back to my point, that could this be drops, and then we see drop after drop after drop as they sit still, and then the spatter after.
So could it be from the nose? I mean, do they duct tape her mouth and her nose? That could be a way to kill you, right? I mean, if you duct tape someone's mouth and nose, how are they breathing? They're not, right? You might die from that.
If this is my victim, I shroud them, I cover their mouth, again, assuming they're alive, and I carry them out. And again, just say this is.
And also to note, she easily could also have a heart attack this entire time. This is a frightening thing, right? For an 84-year-old woman to have to go through. So something like that can happen too, easily.
It's just porch guy, which again, I'm not convinced that, but to say porch guy does all this, you can't fireman carry somebody when you have a backpack on your back. So I think there's a big flaw in terms of that thinking, that she was thrown over the shoulder, because you got that backpack to contend with. So I think he would have loaded everything up, had the backpack on the shoulders, and then carried her out in that way I showed, in his arms like this, hands free, with her masked and her mouth taped. And this is another reason why I don't believe this is her coughing or sneezing on the ground. I just can't think of any case where a person was abducted and they didn't take those precautions if they were alive. Hi, Arizona gal. Thank you so much. Oh, I appreciate it. So nice of you. Thanks for the contribution and thanks for the kind words.
It's possible he made 2 trips to the vehicle, Bella. Not impossible.
You know, it's interesting because I had been doing about 2 shows a month. Not because I didn't want to do more, but because between just difficult to slide in with the work schedule and family schedule and just the entirety. And then I realized, mornings, I'm up so early every morning. And I love that I see people from Australia and Europe and so on and so forth in this chat. And it was funny this morning, my husband said, wait a minute, it's Saturday. Why are you doing a show? And I said, I'm going to do one every morning. I love the morning crew. I love the people that are here and in chat. I love to read your comments. And I'd love to be really fresh and not have to worry about the News Nation and the other bookings that typically occur in the day and in the evening. So anyway, I love being with y'all and talking about these cases. I want to next talk a little bit about, and everybody's talking about this, so I just want to get it out here. Yes, it's true. She did not have any security system.
And this is something we've gone over before. A Nest Cam, the same with a Ring Cam, is not a security system. A security system would have notified law enforcement and probably had an alarm. But Nest and Ring is not a security system. It is not an alarm.
Prior. For those of you who have elderly parents, it is impossible to convince elderly parents that are still of their right mind to do things like this. Oh, I've lived here 50 years. This is so safe. Nothing's ever happened in my neighborhood. There's no way anybody's going to care about an 84-year-old woman. There's no way I'm going to be a target.
And this is a good point by Jennifer too, right? Have you ever tried talking to someone very elderly, how stubborn they can be depending on who it is? There are some people who are very stubborn and strong-willed. So they don't want a security system. They don't want life alert. They don't want to have to give up their autonomy and independence. And people would say, oh, it's so clearly the wrong thing to do. An 84-year-old shouldn't be by themselves. And it's like, well, they can be pretty strong-willed and they'll go kicking and screaming.
And and I don't know how to run it anyway. And I don't want anybody in my house to put it in. And I'm confused about the pad and what happens if it goes off. And then I don't know, and I don't want the police at my house. I can give you all those reasons just off the top of my head. And I truly believe from all we've heard, from what we've seen on the Today Show, listen, Nancy Guthrie was no pushover. And her kids, I'm sure, said, Mom, get a security system. And I'm sure she said, no, I don't want a security system for all those reasons I've named, because I'm naming the reasons that my stepmother and my biological mother, the mother who raised me, has passed. But they won't get a security system. Are you kidding me? They don't. No way. So nevertheless, even though I've seen a lot of online banter and people seemingly upset that she did not get a security system, it totally makes sense to me. And I'm sure many of you who have elderly parents might see that. Somebody wrote in there about that.
And before we go on, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Likes are for my spirit animal, Shadow the Night Owl. Come say hello to the flock of black sheep in the comments. We got a pretty awesome group of people here. And I go live every night to talk about true crime and current events. And I use my experience with mental health, addiction, narcissistic abuse, narcissistic family systems to give my unique perspective on those things.
Why didn't she at least have one of those life tags? And I know exactly what you're meaning. So when they fall, it's called, I think, a life alert. I think there's many of them with different names. And again, I just having my biological mom and her husband, who I'm very close with, they don't want any of that. They are the most stubborn people. It's unbelievable. They still, they're in their, let's see, 80 and 85. Mom, absolutely no health issues, although sometimes she thinks she has health issues. And then my father, her husband, who I love, Papa, I call him, he has a lot of health issues. He's fallen, very serious falls. The ambulance had to come. He's got a walker now, thank goodness, because for a long time, he wouldn't walk with anything. Then we convinced him he needed a cane after one of his falls. And then after the last major fall, and he's 6'5", we finally convinced him he needed a walker. So I don't want to belabor this, other than I know a lot of people are sort of, I think, shaming Savannah, shaming the family. Why weren't you taking better care of her mom? We saw this happen also with Gene Hackman. When Gene Hackman, they ended up dying. A wife died of hantavirus from rats. I mean, that's from rat feces. And, I chose to post until the very end. I posted just the beautiful pictures of their mansion because it was unbelievable. And then by the end, I posted a couple of pictures. Not the really bad ones, but certainly a couple pictures of how it had become just a hoarder house, and a house that was filthy and unclean. And he
better not say a hoarder house too many times quickly, if you know what I mean.
It was worth millions and millions of dollars. And it really made absolutely no sense as to how somebody with that kind of wealth didn't have a house cleaner and a caretaker. They had caretakers outside, to handle the lawn, but how nobody was caring for them. And Gene Hackman had.
And this is the other thing too, right? Hindsight's 2020. So of course now in retrospect, of course Nancy should have had a security system. Of course there could have been a life alert. Of course the Nest Cam should have at the least had a subscription, right? Because most people don't think it's going to be them. Most people don't think it's going to be their parents this happens to. But again, that goes to show you that you can't be too careful.
Pretty severe Alzheimer's situations. In fact, he lived there for a pretty long period of time after she was deceased from hantavirus. And a lot of people really questioned the family in that case. That was a little bit different because the family was very estranged and had really nothing much to do at all with Gene Hackman and his wife, his second wife. So I think there were a lot of family dynamics as to why they weren't more closely being taken care of. But in this case, this is just the opposite. You had Annie that lived, I think, maybe 10 minutes away. You had Savannah. You can clearly see their close relationship. Although Cameron is very quiet and does not like to be in the limelight and likes to lead a very private life, I have no doubt that he was also close to her. We've heard no indication otherwise. So I just wanted to comment about that because I know a lot of this is swirling. And even though logically to all of us, it just makes no sense having elderly folks, it makes all the sense in the world that no matter what, they are free to make their own decisions. They're adults. And as long as they're in their right mind, they're allowed to make all these decisions. But certainly now there is security there. All right. And I love that. So Dixie Doodle says, sending all my love to all the caregivers, because that is so true, that there's so many people that, force their parents almost to move in with them and that visit. And in fact, I know somebody that I'm very close to on the platforms that's part of our team that every day cares for her mother, that's what she does full-time, is a full-time caregiver now. And then Kevin Linehan, he moved back in with his parents to care for them. And then sadly, and this is another creator, it's Yellow Cottage Tales. He's mostly a writer, but he also has a show, and we work very closely on the Karen Reed case. He was on court TV a lot. Kevin Linehan moved in with his parents because they took ill. He needed to care for them. And then sadly, he was diagnosed with cancer and has been in and out of treatment and hospitals. And, I think the world of Kevin. He's a great guy. And I have every hope that he's going to survive, but it's been very, very.
So apparently some Ring cameras can be connected to the police department, but you have to sign something for that to be possible. Bella just mentioned that. So that is a possibility. I still wouldn't use that instead of a security system, but it is good to know that at least you can do that. That is a possibility.
Difficult for those of you who follow his channel, Yellowtails. I strongly recommend it if you're looking at. He likes to look into all different things. He likes to look into sort of unsolved crimes. He's mostly a writer, and he's really an expert on the Karen Reed case. If any of you are still following or interested in that case, and the fact that the witnesses are now being the Karen Reed and her attorneys are going after the witnesses as being responsible. The witnesses who loved and grew up with, in some cases, went to prom with. I say prom, it might have been homecoming, whatever, dance, dated, and loved John. They are now pointing the finger at them as killing him. And it's a horrible, horrible situation. But anyway, if you're following that case or interested in that case, I highly recommend Kevin Linehan. He's at Yellow Cottage Tales or Duvois Yellow Cottage Tales. All right. I want him to move down to this, because I had a lot of people asking about this. Jen, what's going on outside of the house? And, the good news is you still have the local channels there. It's very difficult since you can't park there. I talked about this.
What the heck is up with this here? This woman's dressed fairly provocatively.
Yesterday, I couldn't believe all the equipment that the cameramen and that these crews carry, microphones and different cameras for different things and different mics for different things and backdrops and tents and things to protect yourself from the sun and rain. It does rain there. It did rain there fairly recently during coverage. So, and they can't, because they can't bring a car in. Of course, that's very purposeful. They're trying to cut down the traffic, I think, because the Guthries are trying to take back control of their house. We've seen locks changed. We've seen the security system put in. We've seen the no trespassing signs put up. We've seen the visit, and I truly think that perhaps the family was part of that visit, along with the assistant United States attorneys.
No, I haven't seen either one of these two ever. I don't know who they are or what they're all about.
That were on that visit, because when you're going to do an entourage like that and you're going to take FBI agents away from their work, especially likely the lead, what we call case agents, there's only one case agent that's over this. That's how we do it. You got one ball that the stops with him. So the final decisions, other than obviously his supervisor can.
So the chat says her name is Kiki and she used to be a prawn star. So what's her deal here? Like, is she becoming a YouTuber or something?
Step in and override a decision, and certainly the assistant special agent in charge, can even do that. That's typically not what happens. I've literally almost never seen that. You might see them make a suggestion, but you can imagine in a paramilitary situation, if you're not, if you don't trust your chief in command, meaning the case agent who's really in charge, then there's an issue. So there's a reason that case agent was appointed in the first place. And that's because the supervisor and executive management trusted him or her wholeheartedly with the decision-making in this case. So anyway, really quickly wanted to discuss this. This to me, I don't know how you stop this, but this woman thought it would be really cool, I guess, to have Nancy Guthrie's house behind her photo shoot. I guess she doesn't think that her photos are doing well enough with just her. I mean, I say, why don't you go to a cool building or to a beautiful scene or in front of an amazing sunset? Why in the world would you go to a house where Nancy Guthrie, this victim, this senior victim, has been abducted and then worse, possibly could have died? Why would you think that makes a cool picture? I guess because she thinks.
Because this is why. Because look, it's getting her attention. It's getting her attention on Jennifer Coffendoffer's channel. It's getting her attention because I'm playing Jennifer Coffendoffer's channel. It's getting her attention on X. It's getting her attention from anyone from JLR for talking about her, right? So it worked. So what you would do, like I always say, the social media algorithm is just like a narcissist. The one thing it doesn't like is being ignored. So especially if you have a very big channel, then what you amplify really matters. So if you have hundreds of thousands of millions of followers and you're going to talk to someone, it does legitimize them a little bit. But the way to make something go away is to ignore them. Because look, so a lot of people are saying, oh, this is distasteful or whatever. But for everyone who says it's distasteful, there might be some other one who says, oh yeah, I admire her courage. Or some dude who thinks, oh, she looks hot, I'm going to go check her out. And then they go and they follow her.
Thinks people will actually go on and look at it. And that's a sad state of affairs. If you're not beautiful enough, sexy enough, intriguing enough to not have to take a picture in front of a potential murder house and what we know is for sure an abduction house, maybe you need to look at getting another job. So I was pretty sickened by that. I just had to bring that up. Also, we know about I touched on this yesterday, but I know a lot of people couldn't hear. I touched on the fact that there was a DUI driver driving back and forth, so on. He ended up being arrested for DUI. So that's all that was. Not to make more out of it than it was, but in case you weren't on the show yesterday, or in case you could not hear a word I was saying, which could be because I was in that airport, but just didn't want to miss giving the update, because there was another update we're going on to. That was the whole situation that was transacted outside of the house, where you saw police and then you actually see the sobriety test being given and so forth. So, unfortunately, this is going to continue to happen. I fully expect all sorts of individuals who shouldn't be there being out there. I also want to give credit here. This picture, I believe, is from JLR Investigates. He's a YouTuber who goes to many scenes. He was actually at the Karen Reed scene at trial, which he cracked me up. And then he's been at many other scenes. He's kind of a boots on the ground, which I like because you really do get a lens into what's happening there. So nevertheless, I want to give him credit where credit is due. And this is his photo, I believe. I believe it's his photo. If it isn't, then I will just say, JLR, I just gave you credit for something you didn't do. But I really do believe this is his photo. Let me get her back up.
So for that woman, it worked better than she could have imagined.
Up on the stage, because that's what the show is all about. I want to talk about this photo next. We've talked a lot about this. This again is from this video that was about 2.5 miles away. Again, I always like to give credit when I know where the videos are from. This originated from Fox Digital. Of course, right when that video came out, I posted it right away and said, wow, this could be an important lead. I said that because if you look at the timestamp down below, it says 2:36 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on the date of the abduction. Now, remember, she disconnected from her Apple Watch at 2:28, I believe it was 2:28 a.m. If anybody knows anything different in chat, let me know, but that's my memory. I don't have my note right here on that. Oh, actually, I may.
So this video here, of course, is the video with the car here to the right. It looks white, but we can't really tell because it's a black and white photo. But this was right around the time that Nancy's pacemaker disconnected. So I think they said this picture is between 2:28 a.m. and 2:36 a.m. And I think her pacemaker disconnected at what? 2:31 a.m. or was it 2:28? Close to there.
Have my note. Let me just double check. I do not have that note, but I believe it was 2:28. Hey, Daddy-O, can you let the dog back in? Thanks. So anyway, I wanted to just touch on this because that would be pretty tight. That's just the disconnection, which can be about 6 to 12 inches from the Apple Watch, up to several feet. But there still is a lot to take place. Did they leave right at that moment? Couple of minutes, get out the door, get her in the trunk, take off. It's tight, but it's possible. From the beginning, I said, and welcome. Thank you so much, Jamato13. Thank you so much. I said from the very beginning is that traffic going by at this time of night would be unusual, but there are shift workers. There are people who are up at this time of night. I'm up often at this time of night. And so it's possible this could be completely unrelated. Then shortly after, within 5.
Sounds like Jennifer Coffendoffer's a night owl like us, folks. Up often at 2:28 a.m. What do you know?
5 or 6 hours, because there is, I believe, in another frame, some other frames, because they had more than one camera. I believe the possible make and model of this vehicle can be made out, and then even a partial license plate. Nevertheless, I believe the Bureau, we know they went to the place of this house and retrieved the footage. And I believe they jumped on it. When I say jumped on it, did everything they could to get that plate and to identify that vehicle, and they were on it. And people said, oh, you couldn't do that within 5 or 6.
I mean, you can say they weren't overtly disrespectful, but the act of them even being there at all and doing that is the kind of disrespectful part. Like, why are you treating Nancy Guthrie's house like a tourist attraction or like a postcard attraction? That's the part that's a little disrespectful. Of all the places you can go, why go there?
6 hours. Oh, you can. Yes, Brian Koberger's situation took longer, but in this situation, much more desolate. And also this particular time of night, the camera angles, all the other cameras that would have been involved. And the fact that you have, on this case, even more agents in the other case, almost double, 100 FBI agents was reported being assigned. And then behind them, and I always have said this, for every FBI agent, you have multiple people that are behind them. We call them support staff. And I kind of hated that word, support staff, but you have a secretary as an agent to assist. You have IAs, which are and rotors. They don't call them rotors anymore. They're basically like file clerks. So you need something, you can get a file pulled right away. Now, everything is so automated, except for in certain parts of our filing system. And even then they were working on getting everything automated, that literally you could just sit there and pull up almost any and every file you need for quick reference. But you have staff to be able to help you with that. In addition, you have a whole analytical staff that is available. And I guarantee you, and just to let you know, it's like a 1-to-3 ratio, 30 some odd thousand support. And then,
So you're saying what other people were clothed in there, but I mean, are they using Nancy Guthrie's house as a tourist attraction and using it as a backdrop, like a postcard? I mean, most people who are there, they're like going over the case, like the media was. I mean, that's a different story. You're going over the case.
Agent staff is 10,000, maybe up to 13,000 at any one time. But depending on hiring, there's been a lot of firings and there's been a lot of hirings, right? They've waived some of the requirements. So I don't know exactly how many agents, but I believe somewhere between 10 and 15,000. You have triple that amount, or not triple, double that amount for your support staff. So it's big. And behind there, those analysts, they get a lead like this, they are on it. All the registered, whatever this ends up being. I've seen, somebody say this was a law enforcement person.
And by the way, we're a little low on likes. I'm into like withdrawal, apparently. Likes are free, and likes support the channel here. And they help my spirit animal, the night owl, Shadow the night owl. Come say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live comments as well, the live chat. Great group of people here. Come in and say hello. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already.
And that Fox had on say this was a Kia, I believe. And then I saw other reports. No, this is a Range Rover. I'm not going to go into that much detail because I'm not even sure that this is connected. It could be. Early on, just so you know, there was reporting from TMZ and others that per their sources, and that's why whenever you see me say source, that means I'm giving you this information and making it very clear it was a source. Because to me, if I can't see it with my eyes, which I can see this with my eyes, and I can see the timing, and I can see it's possible. It's tight, but I think it's possible that, in other words, a car from Nancy Guthrie's could end up here at this time. It's possible. But it's a lead. I thought it was a very important lead. But very early on, source reporting said, no, they already cleared this car. I think that was something like 5 or 6 hours in.
Thanks for becoming a member here. And by the way, thanks for becoming a member, Miss Wilder. So when people give away memberships like Johnny was yesterday, the best way to get them is just to interact on the channel. And then YouTube gives them to you. So that's how that works. Thank you very much, though.
And I know it's possible for all the analysts on this and everything to possibly clear this car. For instance, if they got the tag and figured out what car it was, and it's a neighbor living 5 houses down or around the corner, and then you interview them and they say, oh yeah, I get off work at, whatever establishment at this time, and that was me going by. That's how.
So, I mean, the last thing I'll say about that woman is, there's a difference. Like, you can check out what's going on if you're curious, but just the act of using it as a selfie photo shoot backdrop for your own purposes, this seems off-putting. Being curious is one thing, but using it for that purpose seems a little bit off-putting to me.
How quickly that can be done. However, now I just saw a report, and I posted it on X, from a local reporter that said, listen, it's not a dead end yet, that his source says it may not be a dead end. So this is the bottom line. When you see, if I post it on X or if I talk about it here and I caveat it with source, that means take it for what it's worth. A source said this isn't involved, and a source said this might not be a dead end. I really detest source reporting. I detest it. I know there's some good ones out there, but they're not vetted like our sources in the FBI. And so source has a whole new meaning. And then I also told you, I have never understood why anyone worth their salt in law enforcement, and certainly behind the curtain in the FBI. And I tell you, I really hope in these cases that if it's even true, which I don't even know if I believe it, I think sometimes this is what I think why source reporting ends up being bad. It's not because of the reporters. The reporters are reporting what they're being told. This is why I think
this is interesting from Jen. So she's saying why a lot of source reporters end up being wrong. I'm curious what she's about to say here. So let's pay attention.
it is. You have reporter here, and you have source here that is telling reporter something. And source is saying that they know about this from somebody else that is close to the investigation. And then that person that they said that they got it from maybe said something to that source, maybe not, from another person that they say was close. We literally don't know from the source that is giving the information to the reporter, even a well-placed source, how close they really are to the case. And I could tell you, if there's any FBI agent, support staff, secretary giving out information, they're going to be fired. I mean, they're putting their job in jeopardy. I think they would be fired. You just don't do it. Having said that, I am at a loss as to why, at least the Pima County Sheriff's Office, the PIO, who is now big involved, doesn't just come out and say that car had nothing to do with it. Because now you have sleuths and online detectives and people in the neighborhood, everybody worried, was this car part of it? Was it or wasn't it? So just come out and say, it's very simple. The vehicle that was seen 2.5 miles away that recently was reported by Fox, we've done our investigation and we've determined it's not involved.
So that's what people were saying in the chat too. That car that we went over a night or two ago, not involved. The car that someone was saying, is that an arm? Not involved. So again, but apparently Sheriff Nanos isn't saying that. So I'm not even sure where people heard it, but Jennifer Coffendoffer just said it.
Instead, you have sources, and I truly believe how that works. I think it's very seldom you have a literal FBI agent that is working their tail off, conducting this case, is going to be leaking information. I just doubt that happens. I think it's several steps removed from when the reporter gets the information. That's what I think. All right. Let me see. Google Trends supports idea she was targeted because she's older and living alone. You know, I think one of my very first tweets on this, I talked about Google Trends. I always use Google Trends. I use it in the Idaho 4 case. We did several shows on it. I know I did a huge one with Cuomo. We spent a long time explaining the charts, getting them all up there for people to understand. If you see 100 as an example on a Google trend, sometimes you'll see the number 100 or another number. That doesn't mean 100 hits. It means that was at the peak of people looking at them. So in other words, that was at the highest amount of people looking. And it's interesting because you should Google trend yourself. For instance, if I Google trend me, I'm a flat line. Nobody is looking at Jennifer Coffendoffer to any sort of degree. And that's how it's going to be for almost everyone in this country. But then as obviously when you see something like this happen, so from the first on, you're going to see all this trending.
So remember, folks, though, there's probably so much that law enforcement hasn't told us between the local sheriff department and the FBI. Tons of things they didn't say. But even with the things they didn't say, they haven't made arrests. So yeah, they might know a lot more, but even with what they know, they haven't made any arrests, and they don't seem to be any closer to finding Nancy. So that's ultimately the problem, right?
On Google, on different searches for Nancy Guthrie and Savannah Guthrie and Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Siena and all of that, you're going to see that. But it's prior to that. And that's why in that case, also the Tepe case, I thought it was very important. You know, I was able to show, I think it was on, again, going from memory, so don't hold me to this if I'm a little off. I think it was December 5th. We saw a huge Google trend, and that date ended up coinciding, as I recall, with when he was out there conducting surveillance, or right in that window when Michael McKee, who was the ex-husband who is charged with killing the Tepes, was out there. So Google Trends gives a lot of clues. Now, I did a lot of research on the trending, and I didn't find Nancy Guthrie trended. As I recall, the address, there was some trending with that address. I need to go back and look and maybe do a show on the Google Trends I see, because I think that I saw it got kind of blown out of what really the trend meant relevant to the data. And then also that it was so much earlier. But nevertheless, anytime you see a trend on a house or a person that ends up being abducted, it's relevant. I'm going to do a separate show on that. I think I'm going to do a completely separate show on that because I think it's, the other thing is some people just will run to that date and they don't look at other dates. You need to see, as an example, was that a date when she was on the Today Show? And so now everybody's going, oh, I wonder what happened on the Today Show, or, oh, Nancy Guthrie. I want to see, and thank you, Sarah, for pointing that out. I'm going to do a show on this because it takes really looking at your data points, which I love you did, and then comparing it to what Nancy was doing. Was she on the Today Show? That would be the number one thing I would look at. If she was on the Today Show in and around that time, it's probably everybody going, oh, how cool. Savannah Guthrie's mom. I want to know more about her. And then you see it. And again, it's not the number. It's sort of a percentage, if you will, of during that time frame compared to all the other times she's been Googled. Is there a peak? I hope that makes sense. So in other words, if I'm flatlined the whole way and then something happens, just say, I don't know, something happens to the person. So they're flatlined and then something happens. Maybe they get an award for something and they're recognized for something. And then some people Google that and maybe they only get, 40 Google searches or 50 Google searches, but they've never had any. That's going to peak, showing that's the peak of their times they've ever been Google searched. So I always caveat it with, for me, the reason Google Trends really mattered and Brian Koberger was because Brian Koberger, I believe, was Googling himself, because this was before anybody ever knew the name Brian Koberger. That's when he was trending. I think he was on there constantly. Where's the news? Where's the news? Is there any news about me? Is there any news about, what's going on? Because I think he was always paranoid. Are people looking at me? And again, it was before anybody knew the name Brian Koberger. So that's why I felt that was important. And then on the Tepe, again, it was because it was very close to the time of the murders, and there were two different times. And I found that very significant. And then, of course, one ended up being very significant because that was when he was doing all his reconnaissance. So anyway, I thank you for that, though, because I do believe Google Trends can be important. Let's see.
So remember, folks, I'm in likes withdrawal. Likes support the channel. Likes are free. So please remember to like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Super chats are a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Memberships are a great way to support the channel. Probably going to do some members only videos soon. And what else? Super stickers also support the channel. And come say hello to the flock of black sheep here. We have black sheep from all over the world. So come in and say hello. You got a good vibe, and we're a fun group.
So the bottom line is with this, because everything we're hearing is from source information, we really don't know whether this is in or out. It kind of depends on what source you want to believe. So, and quite frankly, I'm hesitant about any of them. As far as Nancy Guthrie, again, I'm going to do a special show just about her and what might have made her a target. I've talked a little bit about Savannah, and I talked with Savannah with Mac, Cheryl McCollum, Zone 7. Swans Don't Swim in the Sewers, her new book, 40-year, I believe, vet in law enforcement, particularly her area of expertise are crime scenes. So I love having her on the show and appreciate her insights. But anyway, so we've touched on Savannah, and maybe it was a person obsessed with Savannah, but I really want to shift and talk about Nancy. What would have made Nancy a target? Because I've found a lot, quite frankly. Nancy was not a wallflower. She was not somebody who just didn't have a mind of her own. She was somebody who posted on social media. She had very strong political views, and I could think of a lot of instances where strong political views, whether it's strong left or strong right, whether you're at polar opposites.
So right now, is she talking about Savannah or Nancy? Let's see.
Her insights. But anyway, so we've touched on Savannah, and maybe it was a person obsessed with Savannah, but I really want to shift and talk about Nancy. What would have made Nancy a target? Because I found
okay, so she's saying Nancy had strong political views. That's something we haven't talked about too much, but that is an interesting thing to note, right? Especially considering who her daughter is.
A lot, quite frankly. Nancy was not a wallflower. She was not somebody who just didn't have a mind of her own. She was somebody who posted on social media. She had very strong political views. And, I could think of a lot of instances where strong political views, whether it's strong left or strong right, whether you're at polar opposites, people have been targeted for strong left and targeted for strong.
The political views is only relevant to this conversation as far as it could contribute to the motive. That's why people are talking about it.
Right. Let me give a couple examples right off the bat. Charlie Kirk was targeted by, I believe, by a radical leftist lunatic seeker of attention and notoriety. Killed Charlie Kirk, who was a right-leaning figure, public figure. And then let's take Nancy Pelosi's husband and that whole situation. So that was somebody who was very left-leaning, who was then targeted. So, and there's many others. I'm trying to do this whole workup on this, but I'm trying to do it carefully. I don't believe true crime should ever become political. That is my standpoint. I try to be very apolitical. I obviously have very right-leaning views when it comes to crime. I think we should be harsh on crime. I think criminals who commit violent crime shouldn't be let out. I think we need to spend way more money on prison systems and rehabilitation systems. I think we need special prisons for people who are just in there for drug crimes. In other words, they stole, but they were a drug addict, and that.
Yeah, that's a progressive way to think. So she says overall she's more right when it comes to law enforcement and crime. And many people in law enforcement do tend to lean more to the right a lot of times. Not always. But I do think our system doesn't really help people stop becoming criminals. If anything, a lot of the prison systems, they encourage it because you meet all the wrong kinds of people and it's not really focused on rehabilitation. And some people would say, well, it's not supposed to be rehabilitation. It's supposed to be a punishment. It's like, well, but here's the thing. If you want to protect the rest of society, because if that person doesn't get the lesson, then who else is going to be punished? Everyone else might get punished if they don't get the lesson. So in a way, it's really for everyone's benefit, honestly. But that's an interesting idea to have the drug folks in a different prison. I'm not against that. Then the problem would be if there's a lot of people who did drugs, but then commit a violent crime. So what do you do with that?
That's why they did it, serious use people who with serious addiction issues. I think there should be a whole nother setup for them outside of where you put violent criminals, because sometimes they can get really huge sentences. I mean, I don't want to get off on a tangent on prison reform and everything, but the bottom line is I think they should be locked up and away from society. And loons should also be people with serious mental illness that are such a danger that, like in the Nick Reiner case, he's willing to kill his parents, which again, we talk about whether he is mentally ill or not. All I know is he was a severe addict and he faked, and I have that audio. It's great. I can't get it to upload on Twitter. I've tried a million times, but it's great. He talks about how, to get drugs at the facilities he was at when they would cut him off because he wanted to be high all the time, he would fake being crazy. Like one time he took bunch of things and just started throwing things and destroyed his television and just went crazy. And then he laughs about it and says, it was great because then I got my drugs. I acted crazy. So I think he's definitely a faker. Did he always have problems when he was young? I mean, he's always been a problem, but he's been associating with drugs for years since his very, very young. Was it to self-medicate other issues he had going on? It might, but it is crystal clear to me this guy knew right from wrong. He knew right from wrong. So when you know right from wrong, that means you're not crazy enough to understand that you just slaughtered your parents. That's another case. It's really one of the cases I'm going to be all over when that gets ready for trial. Alan Jackson had that case for just a quick minute because then I think the money ran out. I think that, the siblings and such, they weren't going to free up all that money, millions that it would have costed to retain Alan Jackson. So Alan made a quick entrance in and a quick exit out. And
so the big thing about Nick Reiner was it just never seemed like he picked up the ball for his own recovery. It always seems like his parents were like putting in more effort than him. And maybe he did have 5 years of stability with that one medicine. And if he did indeed switch medicines from the one that was making him stable, it was a crime that he didn't go back on that medicine. They said, oh, maybe he stopped because he didn't want to gain weight. Maybe there was sexual side effects. But if you notice yourself going off the rails, well, then it's your responsibility to go back on the meds that were helping you, right? But Stephen King did say something that I always think of. You never feel your sanity leaving. You only feel its return. So you can kind of lose it and you don't even realize you lose it. And the only way you can really know sometimes is if the people around you tell you. But again, if he wanted to stop those meds to lose weight, then all of a sudden, maybe he says, oh, what's a good way to lose weight? I hear meth is a good way to lose weight. And so then maybe he does that. Who's to say?
Believe and will always believe it was all about money. And then who went in is the is the public defender. And quite frankly, in working with public defenders my entire career, working with them now in my current employment, they are really good. They care so much. Typically, public defenders don't get paid very much, and they are in it because they really care about justice for that victim. And if let's just throw it out there, if something happened and I needed representation, I would never in a million years pick somebody like Alan Jackson. Never in a million years. Who I would pick would be a public defender that was one of the heads. I mean, if I could pick somebody. So just say I was in an altercation, I'm driving down the road and somebody draws their gun or somebody swerves into me to try to hurt me and I draw my gun, I shoot them. I'm obviously going to, face possible scrutiny, whether I was justified or not. And just say, I was indicted for that and it went to a grand jury. I was indicted and I needed representation. These public defenders are great. So I expect very good representation for Nick Reiner. I think he'll have the whole breadth of the public defender's office behind him. And in other words, everything they need. He'll have numerous co-counsels. All those public defenders can assist the public defender that has been assigned to the case. And he's going to have great representation, I think, far better than Alan Jackson. I'm not sure what this says, Sarah.
That's interesting. So Jennifer Coffendoffer thinks the public defender is going to be better than Alan Jackson. You think so? I mean, if that's the case, why would anyone ever pay so much money for Alan Jackson if you're better off with a public defender? But that's a good question for the chat. In that case, do you think Alan Jackson's better or a public defender is better? Do you think he'd be better represented by Alan Jackson or a public defender? So press 1 for Alan Jackson or 2 for public defender, or you can just say Alan Jackson, or you can say public defender.
I'm not sure someone searched mask with 3 holes. I'm not sure that message, but if you want to resend it or put it up here, and I'm happy to put that back up. I wanted to talk really quickly about not only Nancy Guthrie being a possible target. I'm also going to do a special show about Savannah Guthrie, and I'm going to break that down a little bit more than I have. I've kind of broken it down already, but I need to add more to it. I also wanted to say another new indication that the FBI is really heading this situation, that the reins are changed. I'm going to just point them out for you. Number one, that the assistant United States attorneys, they don't work with the locals. They are strictly there for federal prosecution, and they work hand in hand with federal agents. That is a big clue to me that this has possibly been handed over.
So apparently Jennifer Coffendoffer doesn't like Karen Reed. And so maybe Jennifer doesn't like that Alan Jackson got her a good outcome. Probably.
Second of all, you see that the sheriff is really not responding anymore. His PIO, that's the public information officer, is now actually heading the messaging from Pima County. So I see a real backseat taken from the sheriff in all the latest news. Also, and I'm not sure, I put it up here yesterday. I'm not sure I have it up here today. Oh, I might. Do I have it right here? Nope. Sorry. Let me get rid of her. I don't have it here. But essentially, they sent out a statement, the Pima County prosecution office, and said, listen, any media inquiries, don't send it to, well, they didn't say don't send it. They said, do send it to the FBI. That was very telling to me, that the FBI is taking more of the lead. The other thing is operations has moved from Tucson to Phoenix. Now, let me explain this really quick, because for those of you who might not understand how the FBI is divided up.
Is that a true story at the bottom? Nick Reiner does that. Nancy has gone missing. And now Joe Rogan overdosed last night. No coincidences, I think. Is that a real thing? I don't think so.
The FBI has field offices in all the major cities, in all the big major cities. Those we call field offices. So obviously LA and Houston and New York, New York City, I should say, and all the cities, Kansas City, those are our main, what we call field offices. So in Arizona, as an example, that's a state that only has one field office, and it's in Phoenix. And that
this person on the screen of Jennifer Coffendoffer, it's like a troll. Said, oh, Joe Rogan overdosed last night. So, and she has it on the screen, this turquoise thing.
Field office then has what we call RAs. Those are called resident agencies. And those resident agencies are different places. Like there's one in Flagstaff. Tucson, actually, I need to double check. I actually need to double check if they have a field office, an actual field office in Tucson, or if it is just an RA. I'm going to double check that. They might have 2 in Arizona, and it can fluctuate so depending on the needs of the bureau, and certainly under Patel and under other directors too. Let me check on that to make sure Tucson was it. But the main field office, I can tell you, the biggest field office in Arizona is Phoenix. And then, like I said, there's RAs outside of there. So as an example, if you're an agent that is in the main field office, like Phoenix, and again, I'm going to double check Tucson, but if you are in a main office, you are assigned to a squad. So you're either on a white collar squad, or a domestic terrorism squad, or a counterterrorism squad, or a violent crime squad, or an organized crime squad, or a drug squad. So you have a specialty, and those are the only violations you deal with. And it's great because when you have that, you have agents that become very proficient with those types of crimes, because that is what they do day in and day out, and they become very good at it. And some people, their whole career, only investigate a certain type of crime. For me, when I was in the Houston, so I was in two main offices. There's a lot of main field offices in Texas, because Texas is huge. There's Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, El Paso. I believe 4. Austin is not one. Main, huge, what we call field offices. And then outside of those offices, they have those satellite offices I'm discussing called RAs. So when you are in an RA, like the Flagstaff RA, assuming it still exists, and I know it did because one of my dearest friends was assigned to Flagstaff, which was a great assignment, you handle everything that occurs in your jurisdiction. A lot of people say, as an example, FBI doesn't investigate homicides. How do FBI agents know about homicides? Well, people who say that are just not educated, because any homicide, obviously, that happens on a boat, a train, or a plane is FBI jurisdiction, and also on a government facility or on federal land. All of that. That's why Gabby Petito, her murder was handled by the FBI, because that particular land where she was murdered in the Grand Tetons was federal, and that put it right into the venue of the FBI. That is not to say that a Chicago or New York or LA a homicide detective isn't going to have so much more experience in homicides than any FBI agent, 100%. But also those agents that have those RAs, they work hand in hand with the local.
So the random side note is there was some sort of award show, and Jim Carrey either got massive plastic surgery, or some people said it's so, like, it doesn't look like him so much that they think he paid someone to be there for him as a kind of a practical joke. And then the real conspiracy folks are saying, oh, it's not even him. It's like a swap. But that's what's going on. If you look up the pictures, everyone's talking about it.
Locals. And I know for me, I was in an RA I was in the Bureau 25 years. And of those years, 15 of those I was in an RA. And that's where you handle every crime there is that can be federally investigated, or that you have, and especially for me, I was assigned with different local officers. Like I was on the gang unit for 6 years. My office was at the gang unit. And so obviously any gang-related murder, any gang-related violent crime, you're right on that and in the thick of it to see if there is a federal nexus. So that is why, in part, I believe that certainly the FBI should have taken jurisdiction in this situation, because Pima County had so few of these types of situations. And in fact, kidnapping, by the way, when I looked at, and I put this up on another live, Pima County did not even have a category for kidnappings, because they don't have kidnappings. Not even a category. In other words, a statistical evaluator, a statistical column. And that is why, from the beginning, it really did make a lot of sense for the Bureau to handle this. And as I pointed out, under federal law, when somebody has been abducted after 24 hours, if they have not been found under subsection B of the federal kidnapping statute, they are indeed considered to have crossed state lines, or in this case, I would believe international lines. It's not that they did, it's that is a presumption by law. And that's why the FBI and the United States Attorney's Office can get their foot in the door. Burning question for me is, do they have proof now? Do they have proof that she crossed state lines or crossed into Mexico, or that somebody from Mexico came? Do they have proof of that? Or are they just using that subsection B of the statute to establish venue? That's the burning question for me at this point. We don't know, but I see a total and absolute shift over to the federal authorities. Does that mean that the FBI just takes over and it's like in Die Hard, you know, I'm Special Agent Johnson, I'm Special Agent Johnson, goodbye, we got this? That is not how it works. The FBI and local partners want to partnership. They all have something very important to add. Those locals know this area, know the criminal element better than anyone because they have worked there, some of them for decades. Many of them have been born and raised there. So to not involve local authorities in any type of big case like this would be absolutely stupid. And the FBI totally understands that. And then they totally understand too, that this is not going to be the last case that's an important case that they need to have their local partners on. So there is no way Pima County is going to be pushed out, and there is no way any other authorities are going to be pushed out. The FBI wants to work hand in hand. And I think really what we're talking about is a paradigm change in terms of who is overall in charge.
So Wendy, that's where we found Jennifer originally. She's a guest on Tony Bruschi's show, Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi, and also Joe Pags. Those shows are sometimes more informative because they're more concise and direct. She kind of goes off more on her own and goes into other subjects.
Charge of the investigation and overall who will be in charge of the adjudication, which is the proceedings once a person is arrested. Could that switch back? Obviously, it very much could. If it ends up that the abductors live 2.5 miles away, never crossed state lines with her, you know, it was all right there, you're definitely going to see this stay state. But if, like that other case I was telling you about, that other 80-year-old from South Carolina, where that yahoo abducted her, hung around in her house for an hour, ate pizza, left his DNA all over the place, then got in a vehicle with her, stole her vehicle, drove all around South Carolina, then went over to North Carolina, which was a real idiot move, then went back to South Carolina and shot her in the back of the head. That in that case that we've talked about, in that case, that was all charged federally with, again, the partnership of the locals. So,
yeah, me personally, I'll never get a plastic surgery myself. But while you're here, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Likes are for my spirit animal, Shadow the Night Owl. And come say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat here. Awesome group of people. You never know who you might run into here. People giving out free memberships. People saying they'll pay medical bills, which might have been a troll. Who knows? But I didn't think it was. That guy gave me like a good amount of membership, so I thought maybe he's legit. But then maybe, I don't know. I don't know what happened.
We'll have to see how this turns out. But I have found this paradigm shift very, very, very interesting, because initially the Bureau was there at the invitation of the Pima County Sheriff and his extension and ask for help after those ransom notes came in. And specifically saying in that press conference, if it has to do with the ransom notes they're handling, but intimating that they are handling the actual abduction. And I see a paradigm shift here for all those reasons I just named. Let's see. Joe Rogan overdosed last night? Gosh, I'll have to look into that. All right, let me make sure I am not missing anything. I do want to recap this because I think this is important. Source reporting has said this is not important. They've already dead-ended this according to the FBI. And that was a quote, like an FBI source. Another source I saw from a local reporter said it's not at a dead end. So at this point, we don't know. And Pima County has said, I think I forgot to tell you what Pima County said. Pima County said, and I may read it to quote them exactly. And this again is the PIO. The sheriff is not making many quotes anymore. Exactly what was said from Pima County. actively reviewing surveillance video of vehicles traveling in the Catalina foothills area, including areas farther from the Guthrie residence. Homeowners in the surrounding communities are encouraged to submit any relevant footage. All right, there you have it. All right, everyone. I'm going to let you go. I've talked way too long. We talked about a lot of different things. I thank you so much for being here. Until next time, everyone, may justice be served for.
So this is Jennifer Coffendoffer. Breaking News with Jennifer Coffendoffer, I think is the name of her channel. Let's see. Let's look it up to say it correctly. The name of her channel is Break the Case with Jen Coffendoffer. So check her out. Subscribe to her channel. Support her, because she might be a guest on this channel soon. Let's see. And this will be the last one. But also, I'm in likes withdrawal. Likes are free. Likes are a great way to support the channel.
But we have this, level of new longer-term task force, the first official signal that 400 investigators working 24/7 for 3 weeks isn't sustainable without results. The family has been briefed, apparently, that leads are not necessarily panning out, and the DNA is still unidentified. No additional video has been recovered. No vehicle has been associated with the abduction. Lots of questions, not a lot of answers. And of course, I'm sure that reporting is going to be contradicted if it isn't already by somebody, because that's how this works. One person says something, the next person says, nope. Robin Dreek, retired FBI special agent, former chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program, is here with us to help break down where we're going here. Robin, let's talk about this. I mean, realistically, we are talking a week, 4 weeks in now, almost a full month into this investigation with 400 full-time investigators, and then you got a smaller task force working alongside, and the family has been briefed, apparently. Certain leads, they're not panning out. In your experience, running investigations, running FBI programs under sustained pressure, what does this look like? What does this transition moment look like? Are we in a transition moment? I guess maybe we should start there, as we're a month in and still not a whole lot has materialized.
Yeah, it's actually pretty standard what's going on, and interesting words, not much has materialized that we know of, but there's a lot always going on behind the scenes. I'll take it kind of my impressions about what I would be feeling, because anything else is conjecture, because we're
So what could be going on behind the scenes? We will see what Robin Dreek here, former FBI agent, has to say. But what do you think could be going on behind the scenes? I got a Sable on Blonde notification for Rhiannon. Stevie Nicks inspired. Go check it out, folks.
not getting the inside scoop from the lead investigator on this one. But I always liked it when things started getting to this point during my investigations, during our operations, because the noise is stopping. And what I mean by that is, so you have an initial surge of people and resources coming in because you have such a massive volume, and you really don't know quite which direction to go in. I mean, you're going to have the typical profile based on reps and past experiences that you're going to typically focus on. But you have, as we've seen, sometimes tens of thousands of leads that come in, and you need a lot of resources to run those down. Plus, you have the digital forensic side, the standard forensic side, and then you have the interviews that have to be done. There's an immense volume of things that have to be done. And every single one of these 400 people that come in, this is a collateral duty. This is an add-on to their otherwise really important work every day as well. Their own case backlog of things that are important. So being able to get, for that 400 that came in, being able to go back to their primary job is really important for all these other critical investigations, as well as for the lead investigators themselves, because they're trying to not only manage the investigation, but manage all the people, and then a lot of times these people are brought in for a public show sometimes, that they want to show the public, hey, that this is so important. We're bringing all these resources in. Meanwhile, you have a lot of people potentially at this point starting to twiddle their thumbs every day, wondering what they're going to be doing. It's like during 9/11, I used to sit on the Intrepid aircraft carrier, which is a museum, because our building got shut down, and we reported at 6 a.m. in the morning. I sat on the floor of the aircraft carrier with my squad, and you waited for someone to come by and hand you a paper lead that said, go do this. You went and did that. You came back, you sat on the floor, and you waited again until the surge ended. And our surge lasted from 9/11, probably just past through Christmas, when we actually started going back to our day jobs again. This one, obviously, it's a bit different, but it allows the lead investigators to kind of keep focusing in on that center core of what they need to be doing and processing. So this is standard. This is normal. I'm not seeing anything unusual in this. And they say that some leads are panning out. Of course, they're not panning out. I mean, that's the way these things work. So I'm not seeing anything really unusual in this. You're seeing the public side of the mouthpieces that spout things that are, like you say, sometimes this way, flip flop, wind blows, whatever. But I'm still pretty solid on what we're seeing lead investigators doing, because I'm very confident there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be solved fast or quick, or it will ever be solved at all. We're hopeful of that, but I still think there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and they're able to narrow their focus.
Maybe, but it's like, what is it? What is it? Are they looking into the Tommaso and the band member? Is it something to do with the Range Rover? Is it something to do with the Nest Cam footage? Is it something to do with the DNA? I mean, they've kept us in the dark, so we don't know.
Yeah. Is there a way, or is there a reality here where sometimes there's just the simplicity of there's too many cooks in the kitchen, there's too many people that are involved in one thing, and then that, as well intentioned as it may be, ends up working against the greater goal here of figuring out what happened to Nancy Guthrie?
Yeah, but at this point, I don't think so. I think they're pretty solid, because there's always, I've seen this in numerous cases, and it's so many things over so long, that you always have, the public affairs side of things. And very rarely, if ever, do you ever hear from the lead investigator themselves. They're the ones that are just keeping the blind eye, not watching the media, not watching social things, not running an investigation based on public opinion. They're really zeroed in and focused on the data that's coming in that is important. And then you have the public face of things, which are people like the sheriff and all that is the other noise that's going on, that are trying to give little glimpses of what they know, or what they're guessing at, maybe sometimes, of what the investigation actually is. So there's actually two sides of this. The one on the ground is the one that we don't know as much about. And I like that we're not getting a lot of different leakage, because we're still seeing some momentum. In my opinion, it's not vast, but I think it's.
What kind of momentum do you think they have right now? I think, if anything, they've lost some momentum. To me, it seems like the case, there was momentum building up to that FBI SWAT raid. And then from there, it's kind of been all downhill since then, honestly. And granted, and knowing what we know now, that SWAT raid didn't really do too much. Now, granted, they still got that Range Rover in evidence, though. They still have that, right? They have Nancy's car, Annie's car, and the Range Rover. So there's three things they have. But I think since then, it's gone downhill. But what do you think? They still got momentum out there? Yes, for momentum. Press 1 for momentum. Press 2 for no momentum.
It's relentless at this point still. I'm still hopeful, just because there's still more to do. I don't think everything's flushed out yet.
What do you make of what we have seen publicly? 2 people have been publicly detained and released in the investigation. I'm not going to say their names; they don't need it. But and they're both like, yeah, we had nothing, and they don't have anything to do with it. Both turned out to have no connection to the case. When you have people get into being detained publicly, and it turns out to be absolutely nothing. I guess walk me through a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes here, where they're getting leads in over here. Then it's eventually, getting to an agent. And then as we've seen in some of these cases, you've had people detained temporarily and then released. Is it what sort of, how do they determine what weight to put on these things? Because you got.
So my thing is this: considering I think the sheriff and his temperament, if they had something, I think they would really want to tell you. If they thought they were close and they didn't think it was going to hurt the case, I think they would want to tell you. But since they don't, and then they tell the media they don't want them there, to me, I think that's more Sheriff Nanos' way to say, you know what? We don't really want more criticism, especially when we don't have much going on. That's kind of how I read that. Now, does that mean the FBI isn't still working? I think now the FBI is still working, but working on what? That's what I'm curious about. What are they working on? Trying, like, what? Finding more DNA? I think they've already found the DNA they're going to find. So once they've done that, what are you even doing? How are you working the case at that point? And then something like this, that's where the work comes in, knowing what the work even is to do.
Everybody and their brother, I'm sure, calling, and some certainly have really valid leads. Others have voices that came to them through their tinfoil hat that are telling them what's going on. And not all of it you're going to know if it came through the tinfoil hat or it's something viable, depending on how they're explaining their information to you. So how are they prioritizing and understanding, okay, this is one we really need to go detain somebody, or this is one where we just need to go, chat it up with somebody at a coffee shop or drive by a location or something?
It goes through multiple filters is what, I mean, it's the easiest way to kind of think about it, my visual representation. So every lead comes in at this base level, through a tip line, through investigation, not through investigation, we'll just call it through the base level of like a tip line coming in. And what happens is it filters through that first level of, is it plausible? Is it real? Is it, all these different kind of wickets, to kind of flush out.
So here's my thing, right? So Nancy's cell phone was left. I think they have Carlos's cell phone in evidence already seized, like the cars. But to me, the real answers would be Annie's cell phone, Tommaso's cell phone, Dominic Evans' cell phone, and whoever else. Like whatever's in those cell phones, that would be quite interesting. Now, if they're smart and they were involved, you get a burner phone, right? If you're smart and you're involved. But maybe if you're not that smart, which again, I think maybe they are smarter than we gave them credit for, considering they haven't got caught yet and Nancy's nowhere to be found. But maybe they did get a burner phone, whoever did it, right? And we're also looking for that cell phone tower data as well.
The next level of, all right, we need to take a little bit deeper dive on this. And if it falls into the realm of a possibility, then they start looking at all these other investigative things they're doing. Does it overlap in any way? So in other words, if someone calls in a tip, hey, I think my friend is acting weird and he looks a little different, and he came back and he's got a full backpack. He left with an empty one, or he left with a full one, came back with an empty, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. What they're now going to do is they're now going to take that tip. They're going to interview the person that sent it in, and if they can get them, and if they can't get them, then they're going to kind of put it on the side to see if any of these other data points flush out, so they can corroborate the information that they're calling in on a tip line. Or if they can interview them, they're going to assess the person that sent it in.
I bet you burner phones are even more of a thing in Mexico than they are in America. I mean, I can't remember the last time I've even seen a burner phone for sale, but if they're anywhere, I bet you they're in Mexico.
They're credible or not. And so all these different things kind of are happening before it even reaches a lead investigator. So they keep doing all these filters to flush it out as it's making its way towards the top. Now, if it passes all these wickets, so say we have someone, one of these two individuals that were detained and questioned, it passed all these wickets, made it up to the lead investigator. And by the time it reached the lead investigator, they had enough data and information to fill out a probable cause thing that's going to go to the judge to say, hey, we have probable cause for detention, or interview, whatever it is they want to do, so they can flush out that final level to see word of mouth from them, an alibi, what they can say about all the data they have, explain this away, because it reaches that point where like, hey, this is a possible, because all these data points that we have are aligning. We need to go talk to this individual, and they go talk to them, and they can corroborate their location and all the things. And so all the data kind of falls apart. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily completely off the radar, but it's been pushed aside as lower level noise.
Yeah. Yeah, and there seems to have been, I mean, there seems to be, there's a lot of things going on here. You have obviously what the public is perceiving, which at the end of the day doesn't mean anything. It's
So yeah, you can still buy burner phones. Yeah, you can still buy a burner phone. Where to buy a burner phone? Prepaid phones and the necessary service cards are widely available at various retail locations, major retailers like Walmart, Target, Best Buy, convenience stores and gas stations such as 7-Eleven and Rite Aid, retail phone outlets like Cricket and Metro, online marketplaces like Amazon. So there you have it.
the investigation is the investigation, and we hope to God they're doing a good job. Publicly out here from everybody watching on the ether goes, oh, well, this looks rather confusing. And I don't know how confusing it truly is on the inside or how confused we are, because there's so many voices coming out with so many different things on this. Well, this person is contradicting that person. I mean, is this a case too? Is this a new product of the world that we live in, where it's not only that we have too many cooks in the kitchen going on here, but we have too many reporters reporting? And I'm not in any way trying to say anything negative about all of the social people out there.
But if someone has their burner phone off, you can, on my phone, for example, you can turn Wi-Fi on or off. So if you have a burner phone and you have it off, it wouldn't even register to be connected to, I would think. Yes, more likes, please. I'm in likes withdrawal. Like the video, likes are free. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already.
We're getting better information from the social reporters than we are network reporters. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say that. So don't anybody take it as that. But you also, when you have that many voices and you have that many different modalities of communication, each one seemingly to have a little bit different in terms of their journalistic ethics and how they communicate and what they're going to do to get information and what they're willing to say publicly as information comes in. Some, you normally pause on, is this something I should put out there into the ether? Someone's name, someone's identity who's just being questioned right now. Typically, more old school journalism, you're going to take a beat on that. And you're going to wait because you don't want to get sued, number one. And you also don't want to ruin someone's life. But we have this, level of new journalism, if you will, that goes on. Some understand the importance of that. Some do. And some just simply don't care. It's all about getting the clicks. Is more the confusion coming here on this case simply because this is, we haven't seen a case like this in God knows for how long. And we have never seen a case quite like this being run through the filter of the state of media reporting today. It's never existed like this before.
Yeah, all those things are definitely playing in. And I think the clickbait plays a large part of this because, you want to report something new when there's really nothing new to report. So that's where conjecture comes in. I mean, I saw it I was looking at one of the news feeds this morning about, so here's a great example. So they're saying that the Pena County Sheriff is now saying there's possibility of other people involved. That's not new. But now they're twisting that and using it as other people are involved. No, It's not what actually was said. There's always a possibility someone else is involved until you flesh that out. So, but people are running with something that sounds different because it's different. So and they think they got the lead and they got the break. And so it kind of escalates from there. Meanwhile, it's nothing really new. And part of it also comes from, and I saw the comments from our listeners, with the confusion from the sheriff. Yeah, only from what we're hearing from social media and some, I think ABC put a lot of this out too. There's some rift between, the sheriff and some internal people going on. And so here's some conjecture about why we could get mixed messaging. So the sheriff is elected to really be the face of the department, and he's put out there. And so he's the one that's the mouthpiece of all things that are going on. But if you have people internally, as has been reported, that are not a big fan of his in some way, and then they're going to not tell him everything that's going on because they don't like him. And so might be making some guesses or then making some statements and hearing.
That's true. So he's going over right now why people like Rick Castiger and Sergeant Cross might not like Sheriff Nanos. Sunday, Monday, happy days. Thank you very much for the super chat. Maybe the abductor isn't alive anymore. This is a possibility for sure. We could be chasing a ghost. The guy in charge bumped off the abductor because he messed up the ransom. Yeah, it could be like that movie Batman, right? Or The Departed, where what do? You shoot them. You shoot the accomplices so there's no one's left. So think about The Dark Knight. Or was it The Dark Knight? What was the one with Heath Ledger? That was the one where everyone was whacking each other. But that is something that happens sometimes. But thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it.
He said a wrong statement because, in other words, the communication between the sheriff and the lead investigator might not be the best. And so that's why there might be conflicting issues too. But that doesn't mean that the investigation is not going the way it should. It means that their mouthpiece is not necessarily doing what he should. So
Yeah.
I still, and this is different, and I apologize. We've covered a lot of cases where I haven't been a fan and either of the investigators, that there's a lot of things that look shady, looked off, a lot of things. I'm not seeing that here. We're seeing a sheriff that his communication is not the best for what the public's looking for. And so, but again, on the investigative side, you would have more. Think about this. If there was.
So the way Sheriff Nanos is communicating is contributing to a lot of the confusion. He's kind of not being clear, backtracking. There's a way for him to present this information that is not going to be as easily twisted and distorted. But he's not doing the case any favors in that regard. And he doesn't do the case any favors either when he goes out of his way to contradict Ashley Banfield and Brian Netton. Like, why is he doing that? Why are you doing that? It's just, I don't understand it.
Because there's a lot of people in the kitchen, like you said, on this investigation. You got 400 people on the ground there. You got a lot of different agencies and organizations. I'm not hearing any internal strife between anyone on the ground there. There's no leakage of that coming out. So that's why I'm thinking, there's good work being done on the ground, because the only problem that people are having is with the sheriff. Okay, that means that's what might be where the problem is, and so not on the investigative side. Again, I'm always glass half full, so we'll see.
Is this an example of when you have somebody in power, the Sheriff Nanos, and prior to all of this even happening, take Nancy Guthrie out of the situation. He already had that 98% vote of no confidence. He already had a lot of controversy around him for decades. He already had a lot of people that if you're the sheriff and you want to be an effective sheriff, you need those people on your side and you need them to be able to believe in you. And they don't, and they didn't, and they haven't, and they won't. So then something big happens, and now there's suddenly all this attention on you. All of those votes prior ahead, those votes of no confidence, those expressions of no confidence, yet he sits there and still yields the power and holds the power and says, trust me, but nobody trusts him. Look, even if you do think you can do the best damn job in the world and your ego is that big and that no one else can possibly do better than you, you still need the other folks working with you and around you to be on your team. And it comes down from the top. Perception is going to be reality in some of these cases. And when you have this, and you have especially internal strife, internal people who already don't like you, may not be wanting to work in your best interest or for you to have any sort of gains here, even though this is the type of situation it is. Isn't this just a prime example of when you're in that position, whether or not you're the best damn investigator in the world, you know it, if nobody believes in you, get the hell out of the kitchen. You will not be effective there for the greater good of what we're trying to do, and it's only your ego that's keeping you there. The rest of the cooks have already said, you're not the chef. You don't know what the hell you're doing. You may think you are. You may have the cookbook. You may have done this enough, but you're not good at it. Or nobody believes in you. And unless you have that team there, this is not going to work for you. But it seems it's like a battle of, I'm strong enough. We don't think you are. And everything in between. And it just creates far more chaos. And it ends up being about a person and not the actual goal of what the investigation of the case at hand is here.
Yeah, it's definitely distracting, and he's the the sump of all things coming in that are negative here. And all you can do is try to place yourself in his shoes. Again, always thinking that every human being is acting in what they think is their own best interest, and I'll give benefit of doubt of what he thinks is the best interest of the case and investigation. And the only thing I'm sure he's got his own reasons. He hasn't explained why he hasn't appointed someone else, or I think one of the reasons why he's saying less is just because of this. But also for as much, so again, here's a glass half full. He's drawn fire away from investigators. And so that might be helpful because he's being in other words, he's a noise black hole. Everything goes to him, and so it keeps all the noise and distraction from the actual investigators themselves, which maybe they would have been flooded by having all these news reporters following them around or trying to figure out who they are and just inundating them, and maybe he's becoming that negative central focus point, so that everything gets sucked into him.
So according to his timeline, Nano started his career in 1984. So that said, it doesn't know his age, but he's likely in his 60s or older, it says.
And keeps them allowed to do their job in business. So that's the only thing I kind of think of, that why he wouldn't be doing less or be more consistent.
It speaks to a lack of awareness of one's abilities and
and
the ability and the awareness of one's the perception that one has, or lack of accepting it. I don't know. I mean, you get into dangerous territory there, where even if at the end of the day he's thinking he's doing the best thing, you're not. I mean, I don't necessarily think he's acting in any sort of like nefarious way, trying to not get this investigation where it needs to be. But if you're just going to hit your head against a brick wall, then call it a day. I mean, it's up to him if he wants to put the FBI on the lead on this, and he's choosing not to, amongst the chaos and amongst basically votes of no confidence of everyone. That's on him. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not just trying to pile on the negativity of the sheriff, but it's like, dude, wake up. I mean, I saw somebody say people bullying the sheriff, and it's not bullying. We're calling a spade a spade. These are documented reactions to this man for decades. This is not like, oh, I don't like him, or the investigation isn't going very far, so let's be critical. This is a track record. This is a history, a pattern of behavior that does not have the greatest track record out there. Not even a good track record. So that it leads to far more questions, and it leads to far less confidence in a case where you need confidence, not only from the public, but certainly your own team.
It's a neat observation. Bullying, as I saw that too. Thanks for popping that up, Todd. Bullying the sheriff, and so now here's an interesting take on that. From the sheriff's point of view, he probably feels like he's being bullied. And what happens when we feel like we're being bullied? We get insecure and we want to fight back against it. So you can understand the behavior pattern, although that, like you said, that objectivity and having a loving critic saying, dude, you need to take a step back because our messaging's way off.
Yeah.
And the public is confused, and you're eroding confidence in the investigation because of this inconsistency and incongruence about the messaging that's coming out, which makes a hell of a lot of sense of what you would think they would do. At the same time, as you're sharing that, Tony, the other thing that struck me about this is there are not a lot of examples that from the cases that you and I have covered where we could say that messaging was fantastic. These law enforcement guys got this messaging down. They're really good at it.
Yeah.
No,
you're right. I mean,
it fits, we're looking, so let's go back to my behavior arcs. So if we're looking at behavior.
So what he said was, do you know any law enforcement officials that are very good at communicating? There's been a couple I've seen. I think I've seen some people in Florida before that seem to have a good communication. They seem to have a good way of presenting themselves. But again, you might not be good at presenting yourself, but that doesn't always mean you're bad at your job. So again, it's kind of the same dilemma that politicians have, right? The things you do to get elected doesn't mean you're going to make a good politician, right? What you need, the skill set to get elected, is not the same skill set to do your job. So Sheriff Nanos' skill set to get elected but is that the same skill set to do the job? Now, if you want to look at the glass half full and give them a charitable interpretation, you would say, well, maybe they know what they're doing, and Sheriff Nanos just doesn't know how to communicate it. Well, if that were the case, I don't know how he continues to get elected, because that's usually you get elected because of your communication and perhaps your track record, I guess, right? Depending on the district that you're in. But that's what I would think.
Behavior arcs of let's see, of public discussions and public notifications and spokespeople and media reps for law enforcement across the board. If he did really, really well, it'd be an outlier from what we expect, because it keeps falling short of what everyone always wants and needs. I'd say it's, and I remember when I was at the FBI Academy and I was teaching there, the National Academy comes through there, and these are the top law enforcement professionals from all agencies across the United States and foreign as well, go through the National Academy for a period of time. They get they get credits towards advanced degrees through University of Virginia and other things. And one of the classes they have is public speaking and public affairs. And so, because it is definitely a critical need and a critical responsibility of the top of the organization to be able to speak coherently and publicly on all these critical cases with a lot of people's eyes on you. And this is a major failure in this case and in a lot of others.
Is that kind of like a throwaway class? Is it kind of like, and we're going to do this? because it feels like that is such an important piece to all of this. Maybe not necessarily to the investigation itself and the modality of the investigation, but having the public behind you and having that is critical. It is important. It certainly it does affect the psyche. It affects the investigators. It affects morale. If you have the larger group that you're working for backing you up, not sitting there criticizing your every move because somebody can't get through 5 sentences without fucking it up. And that seems to be the problem. It's like it's such an important thing in so many, and I'm speaking broader terms here, not just this, but so many departments. It's like, oh, okay, the person that's going to literally drive the vehicle that's going to explain all this to the public, this huge asset of ours, the public, we're going to put the blind deaf guy on that and expect them to drive the ship and not crash it and be able to hear people. It feels like that's what they put out there so many times. It's like, what are you doing? This is not. Get somebody qualified for this position at the very least.
So, well, a lot of the sheriff speaking will be, it's how you prepare. What are you prepared to say? Now, the issue might be he might struggle thinking on his feet when it comes to answering the questions. Not everyone's good at it, right? That's just a fact of life. Not everyone's going to be good at it. But if you have a plan and some go-tos, like, okay, I'm not going to answer this question. This is what I'm going to say to this question. At least you're going to be a little more clear.
You know what it looks like? First of all, the training that they typically get, it's hard to imagine training that goes through a curriculum development and gets certified to be delivered to law enforcement professionals can keep up with the types of media that's going to be covering you. Because, I mean, just think about this. People like you and me and the hundreds of others, if not thousands of others, not just, cable news, but people like us that have podcasts focusing on this, that are going to do deeper dives in different areas and different nooks than the sheriff is even doing himself. And so what happens is that I don't think you can ever be prepared enough these days for these types of questions that people are going to be throwing you at a press conference, and people like us and all the others that are doing these deep dives, these nooks and crannies to ask all these important questions. And so what happens is, he's going up there with a prepared statement over the 1 or 2 or 3 nuggets he has, and then he takes questions and thinks he can answer them. And that's where you get the wild ass guesses, the wags.
Yeah.
It's these wild ass guesses.
It's like he listened to me just say that. But that is what I just said, isn't it? The questions can throw him off.
He puts those things out there, and then he gets contradicted by his investigative team that says, what are you saying? You never asked us that question before. Here's what the actual answer is. That's why it's wavering like this, because I think he's impromptu answering questions that he wasn't prepared for or didn't do the research on, because you got really, really smart people asking really intelligent questions that he never contemplated before. So, bam.
And then people like that need to have the confidence to say a few words. I don't know.
Yes.
We're looking into it.
See, and there's our own insecurities and his that can't say, I don't know yet. I'll find out for you and get back to you. I mean, and so think about this. Again, I'll keep going back to that, to the head of the state police in Pennsylvania that was in charge of the Cavalcanti escape.
Mm-hmm.
He did such a good job at his press conferences because he would answer just like that. Here's the things he had prepared. Here's all his background. Here's who's doing whatnot. And when someone would ask him a question that came out of left field that he wasn't ready for, he's like, you know what? It's a really good question. I'll get with my people. I'll get back to you tomorrow on that. I'll follow up with you. And they would then.
This is exactly right. This is what I was saying. You have a plan, you stick to the plan. And if someone tries to catch you off guard, you just say, you have the humility to say, I don't know. That's what seems like Sheriff Nanos really struggles with. He doesn't have the humility to say, no, or I'm not going to answer that, or I don't know. Why might that be the case? As Sergeant Cross said, and Rick Castiger said, his ego is running the show. And it's not just insecurity, because he's also vindictive and spiteful, according to them too. And as Sergeant Cross said specifically, and I quote, an ego so, how did he say? He said, it's an ego that's hard to describe without sounding hyperbolic.
And put something out on Twitter, on X, whatever, to follow up on that question. So it wasn't like impromptu, but when someone has the confidence to say what they know, but actually the security in themselves and what they're doing to actually say what they don't know and be transparent about it, that's what trust is anchored in. Because remember, open, honest communication, transparency, and vulnerability. That vulnerability thing, saying that here's what I know, here's what I don't know.
You want a leader that's confident enough to say, I don't know. That's not weakness. That's honesty. That's
And good point that one listener just put up there is used to working with local news. Yeah. And when you're working with a friendly local news that is giving you, remember, 6 minutes, he's used to 6 minute sound bites. And so
it's a new world. I mean, the world that they're having to navigate through, and so many, I think, cities and markets and officers and police forces have never had to do it yet, because this world of social media, the world of true crime reporting is to the
and freeze. I'm in likes withdrawal again. Got to at least get the 500 likes in this video. Likes are free. Great way to support the channel and get the video out there. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already as well. And come say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat.
The level we're at, it changes every year. We're more advanced than we were a year before, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's bigger than local media. It's bigger than network media. It is now the big thing. So it feels like a lot of these institutions, their PR departments, they were prepared for media circa 1995, and they've never really updated themselves in 30 years. Buckle up and get better, I guess would be the advice. Yeah, just get better. I mean, just get it. Times have changed. It's it's not just the newspaper, the radio station. It's all of this. It is what it is. It's not changing. If you'd like to be perceived better, then do better.
It reminds me, when I went through undercover certification school, my good friend Jack Schaefer, who wrote the book The Like Switch and The Truth Detector, is one of the founding members of the behavioral analysis program inside the FBI. And he used to teach this advanced undercover course with me. And when you're being interrogated, say you're an undercover agent overseas and you're stopped and detained by a foreign power, and you only have so much information you can give in your bucket of who you are and your fake identity. And every time one of those things is gone, it's gone. You can never bring it back. But we had this thing called the Fort Knox defense. And the Fort Knox defense, I use it so much. I use it with my kids have used it. And with the Fort Knox defense is having one standard statement that is, when you're asked a showstopper question that you don't have a response to, you have to have a standard answer that you always go back to that will, one, tire out the interviewer because they're going to get the same response, and it makes it so that you don't give them more to work with than you have to share. And so for me, when when I was interviewing someone, say I was trying to recruit a source, a competent human source, or Aspire or something, if they'd say to me, so Robin, did you follow me here today? Or Robin, how did you know I was here? Or Robin this, I said, you know what? My standard response is, wow, Tony, that's a really important question you just asked. And I want to give it a lot of thought and time and attention. So instead of giving you a quick answer now, let me get back to you tomorrow on that. That's my standard Fort Knox. So anytime you ask me a question I'm not prepared for, that's my response. The sheriff lacks a Fort Knox response. And so that's what skilled.
Preparation is the mother of skill, they say. More than 50% of success is preparation. So you got to have, similar to how we would say, oh, how to not jade to a narcissist, right? You have a plan. Have a canned response is what they call it. Oh, they ask you this, have a preparation. Be prepared for what you're going to say in certain circumstances so you're not caught off guard. When you're caught off guard, anything can happen. And if you're truly caught off guard, have a default answer when you don't know.
Interviewees do is they have a fallback that, hey, here's my standard answer if it falls outside of this pattern. And so that's why he is failing in this area. He does not have it.
Sheriff, we want you to do better. Listen.
Take
some pointers. Your thoughts on the comment section on Substack and YouTube. We'd love for you to weigh in, and we'll continue this part of the conversation there.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime.
No. I think he stacked that onto the other part of it there. We'll see.
Publicly stated they're not ruling out that multiple people were involved in the Nancy Guthrie abduction. That's not necessarily new news. They've never ruled anything out because nobody knows. The evidence, though, is contradictory. Sophisticated reconnaissance versus sloppy execution, insider knowledge of a home versus a ransom system with no way to collect payment. If this was more than one person, a partnership, a crew, someone who drove while someone else went inside, the dynamics change completely. Partnerships fracture under pressure. Someone always knows something. Robin Drake, retired FBI Special Agent, Chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program, is with us. Robin, investigators have said they're not ruling out multiple people being involved in the abduction. When you look at this...
And again, the walkie-talkie thing, that would also negate the need a little bit for a burner phone and cell phone usage, right? So, but again, though, the kind of cell phone usage I'm thinking of would be they had to have communicated about this somewhere. Where did they do it? Just in person? Possibly. But where did they talk about it? I don't know. Did they go on Signal? I don't know.
This full evidence pattern, you got the weeks of reconnaissance, forensic, seemingly somewhat awareness of the door, the drop. I mean, if the glove has anything to do with it, which I'm going to go with no, we have no vehicle identified, right. The ransom notes with no collection mechanism. So a lot of it's noise there. Does this read to you as one person operating alone or a partnership, or is it one person operating alone over here and then a bunch of people that have tacked on going, I'd like to operate in this and collect some money. I have nothing to do with this. But there seems to be the idea that there could be multiple individuals here. How close to reality does that fly to the sun?
So far, there is no evidence that we've seen that's been publicly made that insinuates, and also from that statement, that they remain open to the fact that there might be accomplices or other people involved. Just means that they haven't ruled it out because the probability isn't zero. The law of averages, again, that's why you saw me glancing as you're doing your intro. So I wrote my numbers down. Likelihood of accomplice is less than 30% for elderly. So 60 to 70% probability that this was a solo act, on top of the fact that there's no evidence saying there was anyone else.
I don't know. I think it was multiple people, but Robin doesn't think so here.
Involved yet, says that most likely it's a solo act. And it's just because nothing is flushed out that says it wasn't a solo act. Doesn't mean that other people aren't witting potentially, kind of like we were talking about in the last segment. But for the actions themselves in the place itself, there's nothing that says anyone else is involved, and laws of probability based on past cases and research, especially with the elderly, because this comes into play, because there's always stats on these things, and then it becomes even more improbable when you give her her age. And so that's what really makes this one even more solid in my background, in my head, about the things I'm saying, is because it's low probability that it's anything but a home invasion. Even more so with the age. There's low probability that there's an accomplice, even less probable given her age. And so her age makes all these other things even tighter, because the averages on just the elderly being targeted in this way are so remote.
And again, please remember to like the video. We've got 1,300 people here, more than that. So we're trying to get to at least 500 likes. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I go live every night to talk about true crime and current events. I also do interviews with clinical psychologists and other professionals. We talk about toxic relationships, narcissistic family systems, and I do a lot of shorts on the channel as well. And occasionally I'll do a recorded video myself too.
Does it make it even less likely now that we're a month into this, basically, and we have had no leakage? I mean, if you have one person doing it, it's probably that's where we're at right now, maybe. But if you have more people, that opens up the door, doubles your chances, double your fun with double mint gum. But in this case, it would be, doubling your chances of going away for the rest of your life or dying. When you have more people involved, that's certainly going to increase. And the fact that we haven't seen much of anything come out, does that point to even more likelihood that this was some lone nut or burglary gone wrong? I mean, when I say nut, I mean, because you don't have to be a nut for the burglary just to go wrong. Right. It could just a lone person that again, the intent was to go, steal jewelry or whatever. And this is what we got.
Yeah. So we mentioned in the last segment, there's typically three types of groups that could be potential accomplices in these things. You have the family and close relations, you have you got the friends and coworkers, and then you have strangers or loose partner affiliations. Here's the averages on it. If there was, and that's why right now I'm saying if there was an accomplice, it's someone who's very close to this individual, because the probability on someone flipping with in a close family relation like that is only around 20%, 20 to 35%. If it's a more of a professional relationship, like they work together or they work together in the same job, we're talking around 45 to 60%. And then we're up to like 70 to 80% or 60 to 70% really, for someone who's even less affiliated. So family members, really less likely, around 20% are going to flip at this stage, about 4 weeks in. That's why that gets increased, that probability increases the more that fear of going to jail gets in there, the more the sheriff or anyone can put out information that says, hey, here's more data says we're closing the noose, because that actually ramps up that pressure of someone closer, which if there is anyone involved, I think it's someone closer to flip.
Well, and the reality is, if somebody would flip here, especially if this was not a murder, if it was an abduction, she was injured, something happened that nobody like pulled a trigger and shot her or whatever. It's whoever, if there's multiple people here, they got to be thinking, at least maybe they should start thinking of, hey, it's going to be a battle of who's going to be exonerated and who's not. Somebody's going to put somebody else away for the rest of their lives. And you may end up getting some time on there, but one's going to be far worse than the other. So who do you want to be? I think is kind of where, if there are multiple people here, that they should be taking into consideration. Would you like to be the one that turns the person in? Maybe you get a sweetheart deal and you get nothing. You can walk free for the rest of your life, or you can wait for them to finally catch up with you, which may take a while, but they'll get there at some point. You can take that gamble.
And honestly, this case does emphasize the Joseph Stalin quote. And the Joseph Stalin quote is, "One death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic." And all you have to do is look around the world to see the many thousands, the hundreds of thousands of deaths, see the attention they get. And then there's one thing gets this much attention. One death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic. So I think Joseph Stalin, unfortunately, very correct about that, actually.
And live in paranoia for the rest of your life, where you can flip and turn the person in. Do you think, I mean, this is how, I guess, a rational person on the outside looks at it. Is this how a criminal looks at it from the inside?
It's always important never to give too much credence to how hard these people are thinking.
Yeah, true.
My thought, I think right now they're probably thinking about how to escape. if there's either one person or two people or three people max, because that's also the law of probabilities too, is like if there is any more people involved, it's only 1 to 2 more max. I'm thinking that the only thing they're thinking of right now is, can we get across a border someplace, and how fast, and how do we do it?
If they've not already done so.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that would be something that's probably already been accomplished, if that's what they're doing. Let's talk about the reward as of right now. It keeps going up. Like I said, as of right now, I believe it's a little bit over 300,000. I don't have it in front of me. Again, it's not quite, world changing money or I'm going to go off the grid type changing money. Does that need to go up? I mean, obviously, you have two things that occur when you put really high rewards up. You're encouraging other people to go do horrible things for large rewards. And you can also sometimes inspire people to talk if they know that they're going to be truly taken care of, not just their next car payment or buying a new car, which that can be about what a car is, $100,000 these days. So what do you think the reward should go up? Are you surprised the reward hasn't gone higher at this point? What's your take on where that's at right now?
It's feeling pretty good. I mean, it's at a point where it would motivate some, because
rewards are good at generating tips and leads. Because what it forces people to do is, as that number rises, just think about this, when does the Powerball number get high enough where people who generally don't buy a Powerball, they finally buy one? Mm-hmm. It's the same type of thing here. So it reaches that certain level, and we're at that level right now where it actually makes people say, wow, $50,000 wouldn't make a huge.
And it's great everyone's liking. Shadow the Night Owl appreciates all the likes, helps him to grow up to be a healthy adult night owl. And my favorite thing to talk about with the night owl stuff is the people that had a narcissistic parent. They're criticized, belittled, had to walk on eggshells all day. But there's one time of day that wasn't the case, either early morning or late at night. And that's when people's nervous system could finally relax, because it was finally okay to be themselves, because all that pressure was no longer there.
Difference. I mean, it would make a difference in everyone's life, but for a lot of people, they're not going to rack their brain so hard because like, all right, it's not just 50, but it's $50,000. But now that we're in the multiple hundreds of thousands, it forces people to really think harder about the last couple months of their lives, who they saw, what they didn't see, and it forces people to actually submit leads that they might have otherwise have dismissed because they didn't think it was a big deal. Because we're really, really good at our confirmation biases to dismiss things we wouldn't otherwise dismiss. In other words, rewards force people to think of things that they otherwise would have dismissed, and that could have been the thing that broke the case. That's why when rewards go up, leads go up, and a lot of times it's the leads, not from someone close, but someone who had like a worker. In other words, if you are like, she had pool maintenance done. Mm-hmm. Say that your pool maintenance company, you have 3 guys that come to your house or 2 guys that come to your house once a month for your pool.
And we're doing an investigation, And for your help, we need that DNA on the like button. So help the FBI and the local law enforcement by providing your DNA.
Maintenance, and all of a sudden after this thing happens, you notice that Jose no longer shows up, or when he shows up he's really distracted and never was before. That kind of thing you would dismiss, but when someone turns a reward up to 300,000,
My like buttons go straight to CODIS, by the way, into the private laboratory in Florida.
you're like, what do I got to lose? Let me turn Jose's name in. And you never know, it could be that one. So that's kind of the effect that rewards have on people. Things that they otherwise might have dismissed, they'll probably call in. And then what happens is it goes through that baseline again, like we talked about in segment 1, it goes on the baseline. All right, lead tip comes in. Let's flush it through this. Let's flush it through this. Let's flush it through this. Eventually they go interview the guy, or they do some research. And what they're always trying to do is they're not trying to catch someone. They're trying to eliminate him as a possibility. And so that's the process. That's a mental thing that investigators do. They're trying to eliminate people from possibilities, because the more people you eliminate, you're only left with the one who actually did it.
You need to inspire someone to come forward and speak if they know something about it. And when you have chaos around the investigation and there's danger that could be introduced into someone's life for coming up and speaking, that's not very inspiring. That's not going to make you go, oh, if I go and speak, they're going to protect me. They can barely seem to handle themselves. That's a big deal. Should we be looking at this in a different way other than money? And I don't know what can be offered. I mean, you don't really see this very often, but I'm wondering if maybe it should be offered more than cash, or maybe in combination of cash, to inspire people to speak, because it's not just cash that's going to save the day. Number one, you better hope to God you can get the cash, and they're not going to find some way of backing out of that. No, you're not quite qualified for this while you're trying to survive after you've just snitched on someone. Promising security, promising safety, promising a new life away from whatever wretched existence someone may have if this is the person that's in your life. I can't imagine it's the best of the best. Should they be looking at more things like this for cases like this, offering security, offering a way out? Because I bet there's a lot of people around people like this that would love nothing better to have their name changed to Doe and them living in Montana on a farm where no one will ever see them again after the trauma and shit shows that they've been through in their life. We don't seem to offer that. It's just cash. That's not always a motivating factor for people. Security is.
I really like the idea of that, because so I've really liked Savannah's messaging and the family's messaging they've had when they've made their statements. Very empathetic. You had the one transactional one, but the rest are very empathetic. I would think, again, when you're just thinking things psychologically, so it costs you nothing to put out messaging, right? And especially well-crafted messaging can really be a beautiful thing to do. So imagine this. And so here's an idea, riffing off of what you said, Tony. If you actually put law enforcement together with Savannah and put together a joint message about that, about how we put a program together for someone to come forward with the tip that will lead us to the bad guy, or not to the individual that got caught up in this. See, messaging and language covers so much. And
Good person that had a bad day.
Because you got Savannah family saying, "Hey, we're able and willing to grant grace, not forgiveness, but grace. Maybe forgiveness. That's all up to them." And have law enforcement say, "Listen, here's how this will roll. Here's how we're going to make this happen. Here's how we're going to." So it'd be, because, like you said, the fear factor, because when you have chaos with messaging that we're seeing from law enforcement or non-existent, it doesn't bode well to allow you to feel safe. So if you had a joint thing together with law enforcement and the Guthrie family saying, here's our offer for someone or someones that want to come forward, here's what we can do. I think it's a powerful thing that would, I think that's a really powerful thing to do. Why not, right?
Why not? I mean, I feel like it could be so helpful in so many cases. We overlook that as being a lever to pull as a factor. And yes, I know there's a witness protection relocation program. But it doesn't
really fall into that.
It doesn't fall into that, but something. We should have a lever that can be pulled for these sort of situations.
Nancy Guthrie's birthday is January 27th. 1942.
I mean, that's going to be the lever that people want. It's not always just going to be cash. Cash isn't going to necessarily protect you for the rest of your life. A system that suddenly changes your identity and gets you out of Dodge, that does. And especially if there's motivation to protect their own children and get them out of said shit situation, well, here's the opportunity you never thought was coming. I don't know. It's an interesting thought. I don't know if the levers exist within our system to do it, but certainly something to consider for the folks that can make those choices.
I want to point out, so Todd, that one comment you just put up there about maybe one of the intents was to sow distrust. That is actually one I can entertain, because if the intent is to sow distrust in organizations, institutions, law enforcement, yes, that worked.
I've been saying that from day one.
Always. So again, this is what we do. We flush these things out. So I would say that's more probable than a cartel coming in and taking her. Just because that doesn't flush out, because when you look at intent, do all the things and all the data points line up with that intent. And so because a byproduct of what's going on now is we have distrust in law enforcement and institutions.
Yep.
So that actually works. I don't know whether it was the actual intent or not, but that is definitely the result. So I would actually entertain that.
If that was just the goal, they have succeeded. I mean, and it just like little nugget up. We look at it as such a big thing because, I mean, Savannah's a big character. You know, she's well known. So this must be big, and then the crime must match who it was perpetrated upon. Not always the case.
Nah,
sometimes
really.
Especially if it's a foreign actor or something that was in here, and it's simply, this is a great little nugget I can throw into the American psyche to piss everybody off and turn them against each other and sow discord against law enforcement and distrust. And at the end of the day, all it costs me is Nancy Guthrie. And I'm saying that from the perspective of someone who doesn't give a shit.
Right.
And that, I don't know, from the beginning, I felt like we might be in some sort of a world like that. I don't know what or why, or if there's a deeper reason or deeper distrust that is trying to be sown. But I thought of that right away of like, is this just another thing that's designed to stir the pot?
Possibly. But now I'm going to throw the wet towel on that, on theory, only because I have been part of these things and literally part of these things in the Bureau where everyone's always thinking it's a state actor doing these things for X, Y, and Z. So always ask yourself this question. For everyone that has a job, do you ever have extra time and energy and resources to spend screwing around with someone, or you're too busy keeping up with your own shit? So that actually is state actors as well. Very, very rarely, if ever, does a state actor go way above and beyond with limited resource to screw with someone. Active measures, yes, when it comes to state actors, like interfering with elections and things like that, using active measures like the Russians did, using Novoruskaya Slova, and all the things they do to interfere, because that is good bang for the buck at the state level, like nation state level. But to get down into the weeds of this granular level, I have never seen it.
I don't know. I mean, Rob, look at just look at social media and all of the Russian actors that are there. I mean, there's fake things everywhere on social media that are designed simply to sow distrust and discord. There's actually one on this case. I've been meaning to send it to you. I've gotten people that have sent it to me going, what is this all about? And it took me about 5 minutes to go, what the hell is this? There's videos out there right now, and it's being, I don't know if it's Russia, if it's China, somebody's doing it. And they're AI created videos, and they look like a very academic individual talking for about 30, 40 minutes about Nancy Guthrie's about Nancy Guthrie's involvement in some sort of a pharmaceutical case where she was going to testify. None of it's true. It's all utter bullshit. None of it has a lick of reality to it. But if you watch this video, you'd be like, oh God, what is this? I took the video transcript and I threw it into everything going, what is this about? Like, am I missing something? all bullshit. But thousands and thousands of people are watching this. People have commented on here going, was she involved in some sort of farm? No, she wasn't.
Right.
That's complete and utter propaganda bullshit designed to make us mad at each other, designed to make us angry at the healthcare system and things we're already inclined to be angry at, and just stir the pot more. But they're using it with the Nancy Guthrie case. And they're doing it all the time. And these things are getting so hard to tell whether it's real or not, because they're not just some weird TikTok video or this or that. This looked like an academic sitting there talking in front of his computer. Not real at all. It took me 5 minutes to figure out if it was real. If it's taking me 5 minutes to figure out if it's real, most people aren't realizing that it's not real. That's a scary thing in this. So is it that far of a leap for them to go, we're going to go beyond just this. We're going to actually cause the events that then we're going to pack on here online and stir the pot with?
I mean, that's something that can definitely happen. I mean, they have to be careful that could be illegal in some way, maybe making AI videos to invent evidence to then talk about it. Sure. I mean, and again, it's so hard to tell even as it is right now. Even when you actually see somebody, it can be difficult to tell. So it's not good. Certainly not good.
No.
Okay.
and here's why. Tony, you did a great job explaining exactly what they do. They take an organic event and then they cascade distrust on top of it.
Okay.
And so it takes, because remember, if you're going to take time, money, and resources to initiate an event, you're guessing whether it's going to work or not. It's so much easier to take the time, money, and resources to cascade on top of something that happened organically, because it's already off and running. All you have to do is, in other words, the ship is already moving. All you got to do is kind of shift that rudder one way or the other. It takes a lot more to get the ship moving altogether. And so that, again, large nation states don't initiate something from ground zero in things like this. They will take something organic and then shape that narrative through active measures.
Sure.
In other words, the Russians did not decide to have Hillary Clinton run against Donald Trump. They took that organic thing and then shifted it to sow distrust in our processes here. That's exactly what your videos you just brought up. Exactly that exact thing. They took something organic and tried to shift it. It's just like this. I'm called the spear phishing when it comes to the ransom notes. That took something organic and tried to capitalize for their own profit. And so exactly the same thing here. So that's why I'm not on the side of it was someone behind this that did it intentionally. I think they took an organic thing that happened, some tragedy, and now other people are trying to cascade on and sow distrust because of it. Makes sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. No, that's why I love when I see these things. Like, I got to ask Robin about this.
I love talking about this stuff. It's good stuff.
Everybody's thoughts in the comment section. I got to take a sip of water. That was a minute cough. Everybody's thoughts in the comment section. We'd love to see it on Substack or on YouTube. The links are in the description. We'll continue the conversation there. Be sure to press subscribe wherever you're getting podcasts or watching us so you don't miss any of our coverage on this and the many cases we watch.
All right, so this is Tony Bruschi's channel, Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Make sure you check him out there. And what did Elon do in France with AI? And yes, last night I did indeed watch a couple AI videos. Those videos I didn't mind because there was a couple things I disagreed with, but they were put together well enough that it provided for some interesting discussion. Also, they went viral. So I also thought it would be important to point out the things that video got wrong. So they were talking about January 23rd, for example, and nothing happened January 23rd. But again, look at how many views that video got last night. And the first two things I did were AI videos. So it goes to show you, a lot of people hate AI, but a lot of people freaking watch it too. And a lot of people get fooled by it, I guess, as well. Yeah, I mean, watching something doesn't make you a sheep. If you call out what something's wrong, That is not being a sheep at all. And you should always do your due diligence with everyone, not just AI. That's also true, right? AI can be wrong, but so too can people be wrong and lie. I can see that, Danielle, considering how your parents were, for sure, or how your family situation was. It's not good. And that's well said, Maureen. Well said indeed. I'm not sure if that's the case there. 4. Yes, Peach, and that's going to cause a lot of problems moving forward. It's not good. But it's happening like a slow motion train wreck as well. But that's why it's important for people that are humans to call it out when it is wrong. Because if you let it go unchecked, then the lies and misinformation can be spread even further. So again, especially when someone has a big platform, you have to address it. And some people would say, oh, you're just being negative. You're being negative. It's like, no, you're calling out things because bad things happen and get enabled to happen when people don't speak up. So that's why it's important to address things. Love and light, right, Livin? Love and light. Will witness protection be necessary for a rewardee? That depends on who they are and how close they are to whoever did it. As if it's a crime organization, which I don't think it is. But I also think if that person was going to come forward, they already would have. But they didn't. Yeah, Jolly, you didn't know that about Danielle? She's mentioned that before. No, that is actually not true, Justin. Plenty of Jennifer Coffendoffer's videos and Tony Bruschi's videos don't get many views, and we go over them. So you're completely wrong, actually. Christy says, Jared, that's last night. That's why I was trying to tell you that guy, Johnny, that was doing something but didn't want to say it outright, that he was scamming everyone or trying to. He might have been if people were trying to like contact him out of there. I don't know. I know he truly did give money to me, but that doesn't mean he wasn't also a scammer. So I don't know. But what I would say, this is how you protect yourself from a scammer. You don't give your passwords to anyone, and you certainly don't give any of your information, banking information, to someone you don't know. That's for sure. Love and light, Michelle, right? You know, one person I'm thinking about interviewing, there's this woman called Craft to Christ. She actually reached out to me a while ago because she actually was mad that I called out our good friend Sadia Khan. Or she said, you might get sued. And I was like, no, I don't think I will. But she used to be a witch, but now she's into Jesus. And I was like, it's an interesting transformation. And she's pretty popular on Instagram and YouTube. So I was like, oh, maybe she'd be an interesting person to interview. If the people are interested, of course. Yeah, Jolly, what did you see? So she's called Craft to Christ, Teresa. She's on Instagram. She's got a few 100,000 followers on there. She's also a Brit cat. Yes, I did, Kat. It was kind of weird. It wasn't the night, it was the day of the call. I did hear some of that. I don't know. Some people don't like Coffendoffer, but I mean, no matter who you go to, some people don't like them. Whether it's Megyn Kelly or whether it's freaking who else? Some people don't even like Tony Bruschi. Everyone wants to hear what they say, but seldom believe the message. What message is that, Miss Kim? That's what I'm talking about, Kat. You hate yourself, some Megyn Kelly. Some people have a woman crush on Megyn Kelly that I know. Now, granted, I don't agree with everything Megyn Kelly says, but I don't have as visceral a reaction as some people do. Exactly right, Rooster. The zero all the way around haircut. Meow indeed. Eva, do you have a woman crush on Megyn Kelly? Or are you a Maureen girl like Danielle is? There's a woman named Craft Christ, Bella. She was a witch, and now she's a follower of Christ. It's interesting. She's well-spoken. I'll be curious the ins and outs of her transition. Yes, Livin, I bet you could understand it. You understand it very well. I think a lot of ladies here have a woman crush on Maureen. Much more so than Megyn Kelly. Well, she only reached out to me before about when I was calling out Sadia Khan. She left me a voice note out of nowhere. It was like, oh, by the way, you should be very careful calling out Sadia Khan. And I was like, why? And she said, oh, you'd be sued. I was like, are you like concerned trolling me? But even so, that's still in the door. So I can see. LS, welcome. Maureen, I think Maureen and Brian are the A team to me. But all right, I'm kind of tired today. A little flat. Wasn't as much excitement today. But yeah, definitely make sure you like the video if you're still here. Likes are free for my spirit animal, Shadow the Night Owl. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. No crush from that. Oh, Danielle does not? Some other people, they do have a crush on her, Danielle. And Megyn Kelly, too, for that matter. It's not an insult to have a crush, by the way. Sure, there's a lot of guys that can be. Not that too bad, D. Although the slogan is ANML. Always need more likes. And of course, we watch Maureen because she's actually good at her job. It's not anything about how she looks. So Lisa has a crush on Penelope Cruz. It's not a problem with that. Like I said, I tried to invite Maureen on the show, but there's really not much of a way to get a hold of her. I tried to get a hold of her on LinkedIn, but we'll see. I might be better off getting Jennifer Coffendoffer on. She might come on. And same with that woman, Siobhan Scott, the redhead from Tony Bruschi. Justin, what on earth are you talking about? You're about 1 second from being banned. I never want to see your name again. I'm pretty sure she would, Bella. I'm pretty sure she would. Yes, Jolly. Every night. We've been live every night here for a while. But we'll see. It won't go on forever. But because the story's permitting, it might not be able to go on forever. But we'll see. You have a great night, Jolly. Thanks for tuning in here. 2 nights ago was the most marathon night. We were here for 5 hours because I needed to be to 1,000 likes. I made a promise to Maureen, and the promise was I won't stop until I get to 1,000. And it took till about 4 a.m. to get there, but I got there. So that was tiresome. Which transformation was that, Catherine? That wasn't last night. It was the night before. You might have been here. You just didn't stay for the whole thing, maybe. Nobody knows what he's going on about, Kat. I'm about to give up. But that is about the end of the stream here for the night. Like I say, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. But thank you very much for everyone who's been supporting the channel today. Liking, subscribing, super chats, becoming a member, all of that. It's always appreciated. And I'll most likely be back again tomorrow night. Take care, Kat, from across the pond. No hype. Over and out there, brother. Bella, great night. Again, very sorry for your loss with your brother. It's not a very terrible situation there. But I'll say this. Goes to show you how fragile life is, right? You never know. You never know what day is going to be your last, so. And trolls are fine, Maureen. They help the channel. I draw the line where if they interfere with other people's experience. That's the line. Because, like I said, people that engage and comment, that helps the algorithm just by being here. But yes, have a great night to the rest of the Black Sheep here. Awesome community. Very grateful for you all. And I'll be seeing you all tomorrow night.